The sunset poured like liquid gold through the windows of the Vance mansion. On the 48th floor, Oliver Vance gazed at the city stretching beneath him like a blanket of twinkling lights beginning to awaken as the sun retreated. His fingers, accustomed to signing multi-million-dollar contracts, drummed on the mahogany surface of his desk. The silence in the room was almost tangible, interrupted only by the soft hum of the climate control system. That's when he saw them. In the rear garden, where there should have been only a perfectly designed landscape meant to be admired but never used, a figure moved with natural grace. Lily Foster, the new housekeeper, chased a small boy of no more than 5 years old who ran with the freedom of someone who knew nothing of the invisible chains of status and social position. Oliver froze. It wasn't the intrusion into his perfect garden that caught his attention, but the expression on the woman's face. A happiness so pure and crystalline that it was almost painful to observe. His eyes, trained to detect business opportunities and weaknesses in his opponents, now witnessed something completely foreign to him. An authentic joy that depended neither on bank accounts nor stock market shares. Sometimes the most valuable treasures are those that cannot be kept in safes, he thought, surprised by the direction his thoughts were taking. He pressed the intercom with more force than necessary. Caroline, who authorized the use of the South Garden for staff activities. His personal assistant's voice sounded immediately. Mr. Vance, Ms. Foster requested permission to bring her son today, due to an issue with her regular babysitter. Mr. Lawrence granted access to the garden, considering you would be in meetings all day and wouldn't be disturbed. Oliver remained silent for a moment, his gaze still fixed on the scene unfolding 3 floors below. The boy had stopped to examine something on the ground, probably an insect with that innate curiosity children possess. Lily knelt beside him, her face lighting up with the same fascination shown by the little one. "Very well," he finally responded. "Let them continue." He ended the communication and remained motionless, feeling something inside him beginning to crack. At 42, Oliver Vance had everything. A fortune calculated in billions, companies on 3 continents, properties in the most exclusive cities around the world. Everything except what he now observed with a mixture of fascination and inexplicable emptiness. In that precise moment, as the last ray of sunlight vanished over the horizon, the richest man in the city understood that he was also, perhaps, the poorest. The boardroom of Vance Corporation occupied the highest floor of the building, a space designed to both impress and intimidate. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of Manhattan, a constant reminder of the power possessed by whoever presided over those meetings. "Third-quarter numbers exceed all expectations," announced Caroline Reed, sliding her finger across the tablet she held. "The acquisition of Meridian Technologies has proven even more profitable than our analysts projected." Around the long black marble table, 12 people nodded with expressions ranging from satisfaction to relief, all except Oliver, whose gaze seemed lost in an undefined point beyond the windows. "Mr. Vance?" Caroline's voice attempted to draw his attention. "Would you like to comment on the strategy for the next quarter?" Oliver blinked, abruptly returning to the present. "Proceed as planned," he replied in a monotone voice. "I want detailed reports from each department on my desk, first thing tomorrow." The meeting concluded shortly after. While the executives left the room amidst murmurs and plans to celebrate the good results, Thomas Lawrence, the CFO and the closest thing Oliver had to a friend, lingered behind. "Everything all right?" he asked when they were alone. "You seemed absent throughout the meeting." Oliver stood and walked to the window, turning his back on Thomas. "Have you ever wondered what the point of all this is, Thomas?" The CFO raised his eyebrows, surprised by the philosophical question so uncharacteristic of his boss. "What do you mean exactly?" "This," Oliver gestured, encompassing the room, the building, his empire. "We accumulate wealth as if it were oxygen, as if we couldn't survive without it. But at the end of the day, what difference is there between having 10 billion or 20 billion? Thomas approached cautiously, studying Oliver's profile against the glass. "I haven't heard you talk like this since, well, never. Has something happened that I should know about?" Oliver was about to mention the woman in the garden and the strange sensation that had invaded him while observing her, but he held back. Even to him it sounded ridiculous that something so trivial could have provoked this existential questioning. "I'm just tired," he finally answered. "It's been intense months." "You should take a vacation," Thomas suggested. Your last break was, what, 4 years ago? Companies don't run themselves. No, but they don't run well when their leader is on the verge of exhaustion either. Oliver nodded distractedly, knowing he wouldn't follow that advice. Work wasn't the source of his restlessness, but the only thing keeping it at bay. That same afternoon, Lily Foster methodically organized the cleaning products in the supply closet of the Vance mansion. At 30, she had learned to move with the discretion demanded in the homes of the powerful, be invisible except when her presence was required, efficient without drawing attention, respectful without showing servility. "Mom, look!" The small voice of Isaac, her 5-year-old son, made her turn. The little boy held a colorful drawing depicting what appeared to be a garden with human figures. "It's beautiful, sweetheart," Lily smiled, crouching down to his height. "What did you draw exactly?" "It's the big garden where we played yesterday," the boy explained proudly. "This is you, this is me, and this is the serious man who was watching us from the window." Lily felt a shiver run down her spine. "What man, Isaac?" "The serious man from upstairs," the boy replied naturally. "He was watching us when we played hide-and-seek." Lily took the drawing, observing the adult figure her son had drawn in one of the upper windows. It could only be Oliver Vance himself, the mansion's owner. The thought of being observed while enjoying a personal moment with her son gave her an uncomfortable feeling of vulnerability. "Isaac, remember that we're here because Mum works for Mr. Vance," she explained gently. "We shouldn't bother him or talk about him, understand?" The boy nodded, though it was evident he didn't fully grasp the implications of what his mother was trying to convey. To him, the man at the window was just another figure in his world, without the burden of power and hierarchy that adults instantly recognized. "Ms. Foster." The voice startled her. Caroline Reed, Mr. Vance's personal assistant, stood in the doorway. Her expression, always neutral and professional, revealed nothing about whether she had been listening to Lily's conversation with Isaac. "Mr. Vance requests your presence in his office," she announced in a monotone. "Now." Lily felt the floor opening beneath her feet. In the 3 months she had been working at the mansion, she had never been personally summoned by the owner. Her contact was limited to the housekeeper, Mrs. Harrison, a strict but fair woman who managed the domestic staff with military precision. "Did I do something wrong?" she asked, unable to contain her apprehension. "Mr. Vance didn't provide me with details," Caroline replied. Then, noticing little Isaac watching the scene with curious eyes, she added, "I can stay with the child in the meantime." "That won't be necessary," intervened a voice from the hallway. Harriet approached with a firm step. "I'll take care of the little one. Miss Foster shouldn't keep Mr. Vance waiting." With her heart beating rapidly, Lily bent down to kiss her son's forehead. "Be good for Mrs. Harrison. Mom will be back soon." As she followed Caroline through the endless corridors of the mansion, Lily mentally reviewed each of her actions over the past few days, looking for any mistake she might have made. The permission to bring Isaac had been officially granted. Her work was impeccable according to Harriet herself. Could it be possible that Mr. Vance was upset about having seen them in the garden? Oliver Vance's personal office was exactly as Lily had imagined. Austere, elegant, intimidating. Dominated by a massive mahogany desk and bookshelves filled with volumes that, judging by their immaculate condition, had probably never been opened. Vance himself stood by the window, the same one from which, according to Isaac, he had observed them the previous day. Upon hearing the door, he turned slowly. "Miss Foster," he said by way of greeting. "Thank you for coming." Lily nodded, unable to find her voice. Up close, Oliver Vance was even more intimidating than in the photographs that occasionally appeared in the financial press. Tall, with a physique that betrayed hours at a private gym, eyes of a steely grey, and features that seemed carved in marble. He didn't look his 42 years. He could easily have passed for a man 10 years younger, if not for the slight grey at his temples and the gravity emanating from his presence. "I understand you brought your son to the mansion yesterday," he continued, his neutral voice not revealing whether this constituted a problem. "Yes, sir," Lily responded, finally finding her voice. "I requested permission from Mr. Lawrence. My regular babysitter had a family emergency, and I had no one to leave Isaac with. I assure you it didn't interfere with my duties, and—" Oliver raised a hand, interrupting her. "I didn't call you to reprimand you, Miss Foster. Quite the contrary. I'm impressed by your ability to maintain your professional responsibilities while caring for your son." Lily blinked, confused by the unexpected turn in the conversation. In fact, Oliver continued, returning to his desk and taking a seat, I would like to offer you a change in your working conditions. The proposal hung in the air of the office, so unexpected that Lily had to repeat it mentally to make sure she had understood correctly. You want me to bring Isaac to the mansion every day? She asked, unable to hide her perplexity. Oliver nodded, maintaining his neutral expression. Considering the cost of quality daycare and the inconveniences that home caregivers represent, I believe it's a mutually beneficial solution. You could focus better on your work knowing your son is nearby, and I would have the guarantee of your full service without the inevitable absences that arise when one is a single parent. Lily studied her employer's face, looking for any hidden motives behind the offer. In her 30 years of life, she had learned that the powerful rarely acted out of simple generosity. It's very considerate, Mr. Vance, but I wouldn't want my son to be a burden to you or to the functioning of the house. The mansion has 18 bedrooms, Ms. Foster, most of them perpetually empty. You can adapt one of them as a space for your son. He paused, as if considering something. Additionally, we'll assign a 20% increase to your salary to compensate for these new circumstances. That was more than Lily earned in almost 3 months of extra work cleaning offices on weekends. Money that would mean being able to save for Isaac's education, perhaps even move to a larger apartment in a better neighborhood. I don't know what to say, Mr. Vance. A simple yes will suffice, he replied, with a hint of a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Harriet is already aware of these changes. You can start tomorrow. Lily nodded, still stunned by the unexpected turn of events. Thank you, sir. It's more generous than I could have expected. Oliver made a dismissive gesture. I'm pragmatic, Miss Foster, not generous. It's a business decision like any other. He refocused his attention on the documents on his desk, a clear sign that the meeting was over. You may go. As she walked back down the hallway toward the service area, Lily tried to understand what had really motivated this decision. It didn't fit with everything she had heard about Oliver Vance, a man known for his ruthless focus on business and his apparent disinterest in any matter that didn't increase his already considerable fortune. Turning a corner, she almost collided with Thomas Lawrence, who observed her with curiosity. Ah, Miss Foster. All well with Oliver? Sorry with Mr. Vance. Something about the familiarity with which the CFO referred to his boss seemed significant to Lily. Yes, everything's perfectly fine, Mr. Lawrence. Mr. Vance has been very understanding of my situation. Thomas arched an eyebrow, visibly surprised. Oliver? Understanding? Those are 2 words that rarely appear together in a sentence. Then, as if he had said too much, he composed his expression. I'm glad you've reached a satisfactory agreement. Before Lily could respond, Caroline appeared at the end of the hallway, her slender figure framed by the light coming through the window. Mr. Lawrence, Mr. Vance is waiting for you to review the external audit reports. Thomas nodded, bidding Lily farewell with a cordial gesture before heading to the office. However, Lily couldn't help but notice the tension that appeared on his face at the mention of the audit. Whatever it was, it didn't seem like good news. What the hell were you thinking, Oliver? Thomas closed the office door behind him, abandoning the formal tone he used in the presence of other employees. 20 years of friendship since their college days granted him this privilege. The housekeeper and her son living in the mansion. What's next? Adopting a puppy and starting to donate to charity. Oliver looked up from the documents he was reviewing, his expression impenetrable. It's a purely practical decision, Thomas. The woman is efficient and discreet. I don't want to lose her over logistical problems with childcare. Please. Thomas dropped into one of the armchairs in front of the desk. I've known you too long to swallow that story. You've never cared about any employee's personal life. What's really going on? For an instant, Oliver considered sharing the strange unease that had invaded him while observing Lily and her son in the garden. That feeling of emptiness he hadn't been able to shake for the past 24 hours. But even with Thomas, his closest confidant, he felt unable to verbalize emotions he himself didn't fully understand. The audit reports, he said instead, deliberately changing the subject. How bad is it? Thomas sighed, recognizing the evasive tactic but deciding not to insist for now. Potentially catastrophic. They've found irregularities in the transactions with Meridian prior to the acquisition. If they decide to dig deeper, They could discover the offshore accounts and the diversion of funds. "Damn," muttered Oliver, rubbing his temples. Those practices, carried out years ago when Vance Corporation was struggling to survive in a ruthless market, could now destroy everything he had built. "How much time do we have?" 3 weeks at most before they present the final report. "I'm working with the legal team to prepare a containment strategy, but there are no guarantees," Oliver completed. "I need you to clean this up, Thomas. Use all necessary resources. Contact whoever is needed." "We can't allow this to come to light." Thomas nodded, the gravity of the situation reflected in his normally relaxed face. "I'll do what I can, but you should prepare for the worst. If this explodes, even your contacts in high places might turn their backs on you." The prospect of losing everything, the empire he had meticulously built over 2 decades, the reputation for which he had sacrificed any semblance of a personal life, should have terrified him. However, Oliver discovered with surprise that the idea caused him less distress than he would have expected. "Do what you can," he said finally. "Meanwhile, we'll continue as if nothing is happening." When Thomas left, Oliver remained motionless in his armchair, contemplating the city through the windows. The sun was beginning to set, tinting the horizon with shades of orange and violet. Somewhere in that urban landscape, millions of people were returning to homes where loved ones awaited them, inconsequential conversations about the day, small joys, and shared concerns. For the first time in his adult life, Oliver Vance wondered what it would be like to be part of that world, so different from his own. The room that Harriet had designated for Isaac was larger than the entire apartment where Lily and her son lived. Located in the east wing of the mansion, away from both the service area and the main quarters, it offered views of the side gardens and was bathed in morning light. "Something so grand wasn't necessary," Lily commented, observing with amazement the empty space that would soon become her son's refuge. Harriet, a 60-year-old woman whose severe face rarely showed emotions, allowed herself a slight smile. "Mr. Vance's orders. He specifically said the boy should have sufficient space to develop properly, whatever that means." Lily walked around the room, caressing the polished wood of the walls with her fingertips. "It's strange, isn't it, that he suddenly shows so much interest in our well-being." "Mr. Vance has always been unpredictable," Harriet responded cautiously. "In the 12 years I've been working for him, I've learned not to question his decisions, no matter how strange they seem." "Do you think he has some hidden motive?" The question escaped Lily's lips before she could contain it. Harriet studied her with an indecipherable expression. "We all have hidden motives, child, even you." With these enigmatic words, the woman headed for the door. "The furniture will arrive tomorrow. Mr. Vance has authorized a budget for you to buy whatever you consider necessary for the child. Caroline will give you the details." When she was alone, Lily approached the window and contemplated the perfectly maintained gardens of the Vance mansion. In the distance, she could make out Oliver's figure walking slowly among the boxwoods, hands in pockets, head slightly tilted as if absorbed in deep thoughts. There was something almost melancholic about his solitude, a quality that contradicted the public image of the ruthless business titan. For an instant, Lily felt a flash of empathy for this enigmatic man who, possessing so much, seemed to lack the essentials. The thought startled her. She couldn't allow herself to see Oliver Vance as a vulnerable human being, not when her true purpose in that mansion was very different from what everyone believed. "Sounds bigger than the sky," exclaimed Isaac as he ran into his new room, spinning with his arms outstretched. Lily couldn't help but laugh at her son's enthusiasm. "It's big, yes, but not as big as the sky, sweetheart." "And all this is for me?" asked the boy, jumping onto the newly installed bed. "Why does the serious man give us such a big room?" The question, formulated with the disconcerting precision of children, left Lily without an immediate answer. "Mr. Vance wants us to be comfortable while Mom works here," she finally said, opting for the simplest explanation. "But why?" insisted Isaac. "The lady at the supermarket doesn't let children go into the back where they keep things." "Well, Mr. Vance isn't like the lady at the supermarket," Lily responded, adjusting the curtains so the light wouldn't bother Isaac during his nap. "Now rest a bit, okay? Mom has to finish her tasks." Once the boy fell asleep, Lily returned to her duties, although her mind continued to revolve around the same question her son had posed. Why? What really motivated Oliver Vance's apparent generosity? While meticulously cleaning the library on the ground floor, she heard voices approaching through the hallway. Instinctively, she moved to a less visible corner, a habit acquired during years of working in houses where service staff were expected to be as discreet as they were efficient. "You can't keep avoiding me forever, Oliver." The female voice was soft but firm, with an accent that betrayed a privileged education. "You know perfectly well why I've returned. Whatever was between us ended 3 years ago, Sophia." Oliver's response sounded tired, as if he were repeating an already worn-out argument. "There's nothing more to discuss." The library door opened, and Lily concentrated on her task, pretending not to have heard anything. From the corner of her eye, she saw Oliver enter, followed by a stunningly beautiful woman. Tall, with platinum blonde hair pulled back in an elegant bun, and dressed in a tailored suit that surely cost more than everything Lily owned. "Oh, I didn't know there was someone," the woman began, stopping upon noticing Lily's presence. "Miss Foster," greeted Oliver with a slight nod. "How is your son adapting to the mansion?" The question, formulated with apparent genuine interest, took Lily by surprise. "Very well, Mr. Vance. He's delighted with his new room." "It's very generous of you." The blonde woman observed the exchange with a calculating expression. Her blue eyes narrowed. "I didn't know you now allowed staff to bring their children to live in the mansion, Oliver. You have certainly changed since last time." The comment, though delivered with a smile, contained a barely disguised edge. Oliver seemed to tense imperceptibly. "Ms. Foster is an exceptional employee," he responded in a neutral tone. "We've reached a mutually beneficial arrangement." "Fascinating," murmured the woman, extending her hand to Lily. "Sophia Armstrong, an old friend of Oliver's." Lily shook the offered hand, noting the cold contact of the multiple rings adorning the woman's fingers. "Lily Foster, ma'am, a pleasure to meet you." "I'm sure," Sophia responded with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Turning to Oliver, she added, "We should continue our conversation in private." "Ms. Foster, you may continue with your tasks in another room," Oliver indicated. With a nod, Lily gathered her cleaning supplies and headed for the door. Before closing it behind her, she caught Sophia's voice, now stripped of any pretense of cordiality. "What are you plotting, Oliver? First the surprise audit, now domestic employees living in your mansion. You're not the type of man who acts without a plan." The door closed, preventing Lily from hearing the response. However, the mention of the audit had caught her attention. It was the second time she had heard it referred to with a tone of concern. As she headed to continue with her duties in the main hall, Lily couldn't help but think that there might be more at stake in the Vance mansion than she had initially supposed. Information that could be extremely valuable for her true purposes there. The days began to establish a new rhythm in the Vance mansion. Each morning, Lily awoke before dawn in the small room adjacent to Isaac's. She prepared her son's breakfast, dressed him while he was still drowsy, and left him in his room with books and toys before beginning her official duties. To her surprise, Isaac adapted quickly to the new routine. The ample space, the gardens where he was occasionally allowed to play under the watchful eye of the gardener Evan, and his inexplicable fascination with the mansion and its inhabitants had transformed what Lily feared would be a traumatic experience into a daily adventure for the little one. Most disconcerting, however, was Oliver Vance's behavior. The distant businessman, known for his indifference towards service staff, had begun to subtly modify his routines in a way that coincided with the moments when Isaac was most active. That Saturday morning, while Lily cleaned the glass of the conservatory, she observed through the glass a scene she would never have imagined possible. In the rear garden, Oliver walked slowly beside Isaac, who jumped at his side, gesturing animatedly as he talked. The businessman, dressed in surprisingly casual weekend clothes, listened with apparent interest, occasionally nodding at the boy's enthusiastic explanations. "It's the first time I've seen him smile genuinely in years," Lily started. Thomas Lawrence had silently approached and now contemplated the same scene she did, an expression of amazement mixed with something akin to hope on his face. "Mr. Vance has always been reserved," Lily responded cautiously. Thomas let out a brief laugh. "That's like saying the Arctic is a bit chilly. Oliver was a different man before, you know. In college, he was the life of the party. Brilliant but passionate, ambitious but with a mordant sense of humor that made everyone want to be around him." "What changed?" The question escaped Lily's lips before she could contain it. The information Thomas was sharing was precisely the kind of personal detail she needed for her hidden purpose. The CFO remained silent for a moment, as if internally debating how much to reveal. "Life," he finally answered. "His father died, leaving him a company on the brink of bankruptcy and a tarnished reputation. His fiancée left him when Vance Corp's stock hit historic lows. His supposed friends disappeared when he could no longer pay for dinners at luxury restaurants." He paused, his eyes still fixed on Oliver and Isaac. "He learned the hard way that in this world you can only trust yourself." Lily nodded, feeling a pang of guilt upon remembering she was there precisely to betray that distrust. It must have been very painful. It was. It has been for 20 years. Thomas turned to her, studying her with intensity. "That's why what's happening now is so extraordinary. Your son, there's something about him that seems to have awakened something in Oliver. Something I thought was lost forever. In the garden, Isaac had found something on the ground, probably an interesting insect or flower, and pulled on Oliver's sleeve for him to bend down to see. To Lily's astonishment, the businessman knelt beside the boy, allowing his impeccable designer pants to touch the damp grass, while examining with apparent fascination the little one's discovery. "Your son is special, Ms. Foster," Thomas continued. "Cy has that capacity to see the world with genuine wonder, something adults lose along the way, and somehow he's helping Oliver rediscover that part of himself." Lily felt a knot in her throat. "Isaac has always had that effect on people. Since his father abandoned us, he's been my only light." "I'm sorry, I didn't know," Thomas began. "It doesn't matter," Lily interrupted him with a sad smile. "It was a long time ago. Isaac was barely a year old. Now it's just him and me against the world." At that moment, as if sensing they were talking about him, Isaac looked up and saw them through the conservatory glass. His face lit up with a radiant smile, and he waved effusively. Oliver followed his gaze, and for an instant his eyes met Lily's. There was no greeting, no smile, no visible gesture. But something indefinable passed between them in that brief exchange of glances, a silent communication that Lily couldn't interpret, but which provoked a strange flutter in her stomach. "I should continue with my tasks," she said, looking away first. "Mr. Vance expects everything to be impeccable for tonight's dinner." "Of course," Thomas responded, though he seemed to want to say more. Finally, he added, "Take good care of that boy, Miss Foster. He's doing more good than you imagine." That night's dinner gathered several of Vance Corporation's most important shareholders. From the kitchen, where she helped the catering staff hired especially for the occasion, Lily could hear fragments of conversation floating from the main dining room. "The shares have risen 7% since the merger announcement. They say the audit is finding irregularities in the offshore accounts. Armstrong is pushing for a position on the board." This last comment especially caught her attention. Sophia Armstrong had visited the mansion almost daily during the past week, always with a different excuse to see Oliver. Although she maintained a facade of courtesy when others were present, Lily had noticed the tension that seemed to arise between them when they thought no one was observing. "I need more wine for the main table," she announced, taking a bottle of Chateau Margaux from 1982 that, according to what she had heard, cost more than her 6-month salary. Upon entering the dining room, the conversation momentarily halted. 8 pairs of eyes turned to her, with expressions ranging from indifference to the slight disdain that wealthy people often reserve for those they consider inferior. All except Oliver, who observed her with an intensity that made her feel strangely exposed, as if he could see through her facade. "The 82 Margaux, excellent choice," commented one of the diners, as Lily served the wine with the precision she had learned during her years working in high-society homes. "Oliver always knows how to impress his guests." "It's not about impressing, Claude," Oliver responded in a serene voice. "It's about offering the best to those who truly appreciate it." Something in the way he pronounced those words made Lily look up. Oliver wasn't addressing his guest but looking directly at her, with an indecipherable expression in his grey eyes. "Speaking of appreciating the best," intervened Sophia, strategically seated to Oliver's right, "I've heard very interesting rumors about the audit, darling. Should we shareholders be concerned?" The question, formulated with feigned innocence, provoked a tense silence around the table. Lily, who had finished serving the wine, withdrew discreetly but stopped by the service door, listening attentively. "Rumors are precisely that, Sophia. Rumors, Oliver responded in a tone that admitted no reply. The audit is a routine procedure that will benefit the company in the long term, showing the soundness of our finances. Of course, conceded Sophia, though her smile suggested she wasn't convinced. Although I wonder why Lawrence has been working until late hours for the past few weeks. He almost seems worried. Thomas, seated across from her, maintained a neutral expression, though Lily noticed how his knuckles whitened around his wineglass. My dedication to the company shouldn't surprise anyone, Sophia. Some of us value hard work above other activities. The indirect was received with a musical laugh from Sophia. Always so loyal, Thomas. An admirable quality, undoubtedly. Though I wonder if that loyalty would be unbreakable if, say, the tax authorities started asking uncomfortable questions. The silence that followed was so dense that Lily could hear the soft ticking of the pendulum clock in the adjacent hallway. The tension around the table was palpable, each guest suddenly absorbed in the content of their glass or in the details of the linen tablecloth. I think we've talked enough about business for tonight, Oliver finally declared, his voice controlled but with a steel edge. I propose a toast to true loyalties, which only reveal themselves in difficult times. Lily returned to the kitchen, her mind rapidly processing what she had just witnessed. The implications of the conversation were clear. Vance Corp was facing serious problems with the audit, problems that potentially involved tax irregularities. And Sophia Armstrong seemed to be using that information for some kind of maneuver within the company, information that could be extremely valuable for the article she was secretly writing, an article that would expose Oliver Vance's questionable practices and his corporation. However, for the first time since she had begun her undercover investigation, Lily felt a hesitation. The image of the ruthless magnate kneeling beside Isaac in the garden overlapped with that of the calculating businessman willing to do anything to protect his empire. "Are you all right?" asked Harriet, noticing her worried expression. "You seem distracted." Lily quickly composed her expression. "I'm just tired. It's been a long day." "Go see your son," the woman suggested with surprising kindness. "We can handle the rest of the dinner." With a murmured thank you, Lily headed for the east wing of the mansion. She needed the comfort of Isaac's presence, the simplicity of his unconditional love, to clear the confusion that was beginning to cloud her judgment. The storm broke out with unexpected fury shortly after midnight. Lightning intermittently illuminated the mansion's rooms, followed by thunder that made the window panes vibrate. The rain hit with such intensity that it seemed determined to find any crack to seep through. Lily woke with a start when her bedroom door opened silently. Isaac's small figure was silhouetted against the dim light of the hallway. "Mom, I'm scared," he whispered, his voice barely audible over the storm's roar. "Come here, sweetheart," Lily responded, making room for him in her bed. The boy ran to her and curled up against her chest, trembling slightly each time a new thunderclap shook the mansion. "Thunder is just clouds bumping into each other," Lily explained, stroking his hair, "like when you clap very loudly but in the sky." "And lightning?" asked Isaac, peeking above the blanket with just his eyes. "They're like camera flashes taking pictures of the earth from above." This simplified explanation seemed to momentarily calm the boy. However, when the lights flickered several times before going out completely, plunging the room into almost total darkness, Isaac clung more tightly to his mother. "The power's out," murmured Lily. "Don't worry. I'm sure it will come back soon." Minutes passed, and the electricity didn't return. Through the window, Lily could see that the entire mansion and surroundings were in darkness. The outage seemed to affect the whole neighborhood. A soft knock at the door startled them both. "Ms. Foster." Harriet's voice sounded unusually tense. "Are you awake?" "Yes, come in," Lily responded, sitting up in bed. The door opened, and Harriet entered with a lit candle in hand, her face taking on a ghostly aspect under the flickering yellow light. "Mr. Vance requests your presence in the main hall. It seems the backup power system has failed, and he needs help locating the emergency candles and flashlights." "Me?" Lily asked, surprised. "Surely you know the house better, Harriet." The older woman gave a tired smile. "My knees aren't what they used to be, child, and most of the staff are on their days off. It's just you, me, and Mr. Vance in the mansion tonight." Lily nodded, though the idea of wandering through the immense mansion in darkness with Oliver Vance seemed strangely intimidating. "What should I do with Isaac? He's scared of the storm." "Bring him with you," Harriet suggested. The main hall has a fireplace. It will be warmer and more welcoming than these rooms." After wrapping herself and Isaac in thick bathrobes to protect them from the sudden chill, Lily followed Harriet through the dark corridors of the mansion. The rain continued to lash with violence, and the lightning provided occasional flashes that transformed the elegant rooms into almost Gothic scenarios of elongated shadows and disturbing silhouettes. When they reached the main hall, they found Oliver kneeling in front of the fireplace, trying to light a fire with carefully stacked logs. He wore pajama pants and a simple t-shirt, a surprisingly casual outfit that made him look younger and somehow more human. "Ah, Miss Foster, thank you for coming," he said without looking up, concentrated on his task. "I apologize for disturbing you at this hour, but I'm afraid we're experiencing a small logistical crisis." "Don't worry, Mr. Vance," Lily responded, observing with a certain fascination how this man, accustomed to directing corporate empires, struggled with something as basic as lighting a fire. "Can I help you with that?" Oliver looked at her over his shoulder, a flash of frustration in his eyes. "Do you have experience with fireplaces?" "I grew up in a country house," Lily explained, approaching. "My grandfather taught me to light fires when I was Isaac's age." With a gesture of surrender, Oliver moved aside, giving her space in front of the fireplace. Lily readjusted the logs, added some more crumpled paper as a starter, and with precise movements managed to create a small flame, carefully nurturing it until achieving a stable and welcoming fire. "Impressive," commented Oliver, genuinely admiring. "Clearly there are practical aspects of life for which Harvard Business School didn't adequately prepare me." Harriet entered at that moment with a tray containing several additional candles and a bottle of cognac with 3 glasses. "I thought we might need something to warm us up," she explained, placing the tray on a low table. "I'll go find some blankets." Once the woman withdrew, an uncomfortable silence settled between Oliver and Lily. The crackling of the fire and the constant patter of rain against the windows were the only sounds filling the room. Isaac, momentarily forgetting his fear of the storm, had approached one of the windows and was watching, fascinated, the spectacle of nature unleashed. "Your son is an extraordinary boy," Oliver finally commented, pouring cognac into 2 of the glasses. "He has a natural curiosity that is refreshing." Lily accepted the glass he offered, though she only held it between her hands, letting the crystal's warmth warm her cold fingers. "Thank you. Sometimes I think he observes the world in a way that we adults have forgotten." "Precisely," Oliver nodded, taking a small sip of his drink. "It's that capacity for wonder that we lose somewhere along the path to adulthood, the ability to see the extraordinary in the everyday." There was something so unexpectedly poetic in those words that Lily looked at him with surprise. This wasn't the Oliver Vance described in financial press articles, the ruthless businessman capable of destroying entire companies without blinking. "Isaac thinks you're interesting," Lily said, the words escaping her lips before she could filter them. "He says you have sad but kind eyes." For an instant, something akin to vulnerability crossed Oliver's face before his expression returned to its habitual neutrality. "Children see things that others don't perceive," he responded simply. A particularly intense lightning bolt illuminated the room, followed almost immediately by a deafening thunderclap that made the crystal shake. Isaac ran instinctively to his mother, curling up against her. "Don't be afraid, little one," said Oliver, his voice surprisingly soft. "You're perfectly safe here." "Do you promise?" asked Isaac, looking at him with his large dark eyes. "I promise," Oliver nodded solemnly, as if he were closing the most important deal of his career. "This house has withstood storms for over 100 years, and besides—" He stood and walked to one of the bookshelves, searching for something among the books. He returned with a small object that he handed to Isaac, an antique brass kaleidoscope with mother-of-pearl inlays. "When I was your age and storms frightened me, my grandfather gave me this. He said it was magical, that it could transform any fear into something beautiful if you looked through it." Isaac took the object with reverence, examining it with curiosity before bringing it to his eye. His expression of amazement as he turned the cylinder and saw the changing, colorful shapes drew a genuine smile from Oliver. "Mom, look! It's like a dancing rainbow," exclaimed the boy, offering her the kaleidoscope. Lily took it and looked through it, marveling at the geometric patterns that formed and transformed with each slight movement. "It's beautiful," she said, returning it to Isaac. "You can keep it," Oliver offered. It seems to me you'll appreciate it more than I do. But it's yours, Lily protested, surprised by the gesture. It seems to have sentimental value. Precisely, Oliver responded, his gaze meeting hers. Valuable things should be with those who can truly appreciate them. Harriet returned with several thick blankets, breaking the moment of connection that had been established. As she tucked in Isaac, who was already beginning to nod off, Lily couldn't help but think about the complexity of the man seated across from her. Who was Oliver Vance, really? The ruthless businessman her editor had assigned her to investigate, or this man capable of unexpectedly kind gestures? The storm continued for hours, but inside the hall, illuminated by the warm light of the fire and candles, a strange oasis of calm had been created. Isaac fell asleep, nestled under the blankets, his small hand still clutching the kaleidoscope. Harriet had also retired to rest, leaving Oliver and Lily alone with the crackling flames as their only company. "May I ask you something personal, Miss Foster?" Oliver's voice broke the silence. Lily, who had been contemplating the flames almost hypnotized, looked at him with a certain caution. "Of course. What makes you happy?" The question, so simple yet so profound, took her by surprise. "Excuse me?" "Happiness," Oliver repeated, contemplating the contents of his glass. "It's a concept that increasingly eludes me. I've observed that you, despite the evident difficulties in your life, seem to possess it in abundance. I was wondering what your secret is." Lily reflected for a moment, aware of the sincerity underlying the question. "I don't think there's a secret, Mr. Vance. For me, happiness is in the small moments. Isaac's smile when he learns something new, a hot cup of tea after an exhausting day, the first flower that appears in spring." She paused, searching for words. "I believe happiness isn't a destination, but a way of traveling." Oliver nodded slowly, considering her words. "An interesting perspective, and probably wiser than mine." "What's yours?" Lily dared to ask. "For years I've operated under the premise that happiness would come when I achieved certain objectives, growing the company to a certain value, acquiring specific properties, reaching a particular position of power." He let out a humorless laugh. "The problem is that each time I reach one of those goals, the satisfaction lasts approximately 30 seconds before my mind establishes the next target." There was so much raw honesty in that confession that Lily felt a pang of empathy. It's never too late to change perspective. "Do you think so?" Oliver looked at her directly, and for the first time Lily clearly saw the loneliness in those grey eyes. "Sometimes I think I've traveled too far in one direction to turn back." "It's not about turning back," Lily responded softly, "but about taking a new direction from where you are now." A contemplative silence followed her words. The fire had diminished, transforming into reddish embers that emitted a softer but constant heat. The storm had also abated, though the rain continued to fall in a rhythmic and almost musical patter. "You should try to get some sleep," Oliver finally suggested, standing up. "You can stay here with your son. You'll be more comfortable than returning to your rooms in the darkness." "Thank you," Lily responded. "And you?" "I rarely sleep more than 4 hours," he confessed with a slight smile. "Another habit I should probably reconsider." He headed towards the door but stopped before exiting. "Thank you, Lily," he said, using her first name for the first time. "For the conversation. It was enlightening." Before she could respond, Oliver had disappeared into the darkness of the hallway, leaving her with a strange sensation of having glimpsed, if only briefly, the real man behind the facade of the powerful businessman. And that discovery greatly complicated the task that had led her to infiltrate the Vance mansion. The revelation came unexpectedly, 3 weeks after the night of the storm. Lily was in the library, meticulously organizing the books that Harriet had taken out to clean the shelves, when she heard raised voices coming from the adjacent office. She immediately recognized Oliver's grave tone and Thomas's tense voice. "Completely unacceptable," Oliver was saying, his voice containing barely controlled fury. "How is it possible you didn't realize this sooner?" "I did everything possible, Oliver," Thomas responded, sounding exhausted. "But someone leaked specific information about the offshore accounts, information that only 5 people had access to, including us two. Are you suggesting we have a mole?" "I'm not suggesting it. I'm stating it. Someone within our inner circle is passing information to the press. The audit was just the beginning. Now we have the IRS investigating and a journalist from the Meridian preparing an investigative article that could destroy us. Lily froze, the book she was holding almost slipping from her suddenly numb fingers. The Meridian, her newspaper. The article Thomas mentioned was hers, the one she had been preparing for months, infiltrating as a domestic employee to obtain evidence of the questionable tax practices of Vance Corporation. "What do we know about the journalist?" Oliver asked, his voice now dangerously calm. "Only that they sign under the pseudonym L. Virtue and that they've spent years specializing in exposing corporate scandals," Thomas replied. "But we've hired a private investigator to identify them and neutralize the threat." Lily felt the air leave her lungs. L. Virtue, the anagram she had created by combining the letters of her real name. They were looking for her, and if they found her, she didn't even want to think about the consequences. "I don't want neutralizations, Thomas." Oliver's voice sounded firm. "We're not criminals." "No? And what would you call what we did with Meridian's funds before the acquisition, or the tax maneuvers to avoid paying taxes in 3 different countries?" "Those were business decisions in desperate times," Oliver responded after a pause. "Decisions that I made, not you. If anyone should face the consequences, it will be me." "Don't be noble now, Oliver. We're in this together. We always have been." There was silence, and Lily held her breath, fearing they had detected her presence. "Have you considered," Oliver finally continued, his voice strangely reflective, "that perhaps this is a sign?" "What are you talking about?" "That maybe it's time for us to stop, to take responsibility for our actions." Thomas's incredulous laughter resonated in the office. "Who are you, and what have you done with Oliver Vance? 3 months ago, you would have moved heaven and earth to silence that journalist and bury the investigation. Maybe 3 months ago I was a different person. This is because of her, isn't it?" Thomas's voice acquired an accusatory tone. "Because of the housekeeper and her son. They've softened you, Oliver. They've made you vulnerable precisely when we need to be stronger. Or maybe they've made me see what really matters," Oliver responded with surprising tranquility. "For 20 years, I built an empire based on the premise that success and power were the only things of value. But now what?" challenged Thomas. "Now I'm not so sure," completed Oliver. "I observe Lily with her son, the way they look at each other, how they share moments of simple joy. And I wonder if I've been pursuing the wrong things all this time." Lily felt her heart accelerate at the mention of her name. Was it possible that Oliver Vance, the man she had come to unmask as a ruthless corporate criminal, was experiencing a genuine change of heart? "You've lost your mind," declared Thomas, his voice mixing incredulity and concern. "That woman isn't who you think. We don't know anything about her, Oliver. For all we know, she could be the one leaking information." There was a prolonged silence, during which Lily barely dared to breathe. If Oliver suspected her, all would be lost. Not just her investigation, but also Isaac's safety and her own. "Investigate her," Oliver finally said, his voice again cold and professional, discreetly. "I want to know everything about Lily Foster. Her past, her references, any possible connection with media outlets or competing firms." "I'll handle it personally," Thomas assured. Lily heard footsteps approaching the door and quickly pretended to be absorbed in organizing the books, her mind working at full speed. She needed to act quickly. Soon they would discover that Lily Foster was an identity created specifically for this investigation, that her references were false, and that her real name was Lily Fontaine, an investigative reporter for the Meridian. When Thomas left the office, he barely looked at her, his mind evidently occupied with plans for the investigation. Lily waited a few minutes, struggling to maintain her composure, before also leaving the library. She needed to return to her room, urgently contact her editor, warn him about the private investigator, and rethink the entire operation. As she walked hurriedly down the hallway, a small figure suddenly appeared, blocking her path. Isaac, with the kaleidoscope Oliver had given him firmly gripped in his hand, looked at her with a radiant smile. "Mom, Mr. Oliver invited me to ride on his boat on Sunday. Can we go?" "Can we?" The innocent excitement on her son's face was like a dagger to Lily's heart. During these weeks, Isaac had developed an unexpected bond with Oliver. The businessman, initially distant, had begun to seek the boy's company with increasing frequency. He taught him the names of constellations from the terrace on clear nights, patiently explained how the mansion's antique clocks worked, and had even started teaching him chess on an ivory board that had belonged to his grandfather. And now, as she looked at her son anxiously awaiting her answer, Lily faced the painful reality of her situation. How could she continue with her investigation knowing the harm it would cause, not only to Oliver, but also to Isaac? "We'll see, sweetheart," she finally responded, caressing his hair. "Now go finish your drawings. Mom has to do something important." In the privacy of her room, Lily took out the prepaid cell phone she kept hidden in the lining of her suitcase. She dialed the number of Nathan Quinn, her editor at the Meridian, aware that the conversation she was about to have could mean the end of her journalistic career. "Nathan, it's me," she said as soon as the call was answered. "We have a problem." The meeting took place in a small cafe on the outskirts of the city, far from the circles frequented by the economic elite. Lily had managed to leave the mansion with the excuse of taking Isaac to the pediatrician, leaving the boy in the care of a former neighbor whom she trusted completely. Nathan Quinn, a man in his 50s with perpetual dark circles under his eyes and an expression that mixed cynicism and passion for journalism, was waiting for her at a back table, his coffee already cold and forgotten in front of him. "This is madness," were his first words when Lily sat across from him. 3 months of investigation, thousands invested in creating your false identity, and now you want to abandon it when we're about to have the story of the year. "I didn't say I want to abandon it," Lily responded, though she wasn't sure what she really wanted. "I'm just saying we need to rethink our strategy. Vance has hired a private investigator. It's a matter of days, perhaps hours, before they discover who I really am." "All the more reason to publish what we have now," insisted Nathan, leaning forward. "We've verified the information about the offshore accounts. We have documents that prove the tax irregularities. With your testimony about the conversations you've heard, we have enough to sink Vance and his corporation." Lily remained silent, contemplating the coffee the waiter had just served her. The guilt she felt was like a physical weight on her shoulders. "What's really worrying you, Lily?" asked Nathan, studying her with the perspicacity that had made him one of the most respected editors in investigative journalism. "I've never seen you doubt like this. You've exposed dozens of corrupt executives without blinking. This is different," she finally admitted. "Because of your son. Has he become attached to the environment?" "Partly," Lily conceded. "Isaac has developed a bond with Vance. But it's more than that. I believe Oliver is genuinely changing. I've seen an evolution in him over these weeks, a humanity that contradicts everything we thought we knew about him." Nathan looked at her with incredulity. "Please tell me you're not developing some kind of Stockholm syndrome with the subject of your investigation." "It's not that," Lily protested, though a traitorous blush colored her cheeks. "It's just that, what if we've been wrong? What if there are more nuances to this story than we initially believed?" "Facts are facts, Lily. Vance evaded taxes, manipulated financial reports, and used privileged information to eliminate competitors. His supposed personal evolution doesn't erase those crimes." Lily knew Nathan was right, at least from a strictly journalistic perspective. Professional integrity demanded that uncomfortable truths be published, regardless of personal feelings involved. "Give me 1 more week," she finally asked. "I want to be completely sure before publishing something that will destroy not only Vance, but everyone who depends on him, including hundreds of innocent employees." Nathan sighed heavily, running a hand through his graying hair. 3 days, Lily, that's all I can give you. After that, we'll publish with or without your final blessing. The editorial board is pressing, and we have other newspapers on our heels with this story." With a knot in her throat, Lily nodded. 3 days to make a decision that would irrevocably alter multiple lives, including her own. "One more thing," added Nathan as Lily rose to leave. "Be careful. If Vance discovers who you are before we publish, we don't know how he might react. These powerful men, when they feel cornered, can be extremely dangerous." "Oliver isn't like that," Lily automatically responded, surprising herself with the firmness of her conviction. Nathan's expression softened, mixing concern and compassion. "Oh, Lily, I think you're more emotionally involved than you're willing to admit. Please be careful, not just for your career, but for yourself." As she returned to the Vance mansion, her editor's words resonated in her mind. Was it possible that her personal feelings were clouding her professional judgment? Or had she genuinely discovered something about Oliver Vance that others hadn't seen? A human complexity that deserved to be considered before publicly condemning him. What was clear was that in 3 days she would have to make the most difficult decision of her career, and whichever path she chose, there would be no turning back. Sunday morning dawned with a perfectly clear sky, as if the universe had decided to grant them an idyllic setting for what Lily knew could be their last activity with Oliver before everything changed irrevocably. "We're going sailing! We're going sailing!" sang Isaac as he jumped around his mother, who was preparing a small backpack with sunscreen, hats and light jackets in case the weather changed on the coast. "Yes, sweetheart, but remember what we talked about," Lily reminded him. "You have to obey Mr. Vance at all times and never move away from us when we're on the boat." "I promise," the boy assured, though his excitement made Lily doubt he was really processing her warnings. Since Oliver had extended the invitation, Isaac had talked of nothing else. For a boy who had grown up in a modest apartment in a working-class neighborhood, the prospect of sailing on a billionaire's private yacht was like a fairy tale come true. For Lily, however, the excursion was tinged with bittersweet feeling. Each passing hour was a reminder of the time running out before she had to make her final decision. Nathan's 3-day deadline expired the next day. "Miss Foster, Mr. Vance is waiting for you at the main entrance," announced Harriet, appearing at the bedroom door. The older woman observed Isaac with a smile that momentarily softened her usually severe face. "Someone's very excited, I see." "We're going on a big boat," exclaimed Isaac, extending his arms to indicate the imagined dimensions of the yacht. "Indeed," Harriet nodded. Then, addressing Lily in a low voice, she added, "I've never seen Mr. Vance like this, you know. Last night I found him personally reviewing every safety detail of the yacht. He even bought a life jacket exactly the size of the boy." That small detail, the image of Oliver Vance worrying about Isaac's safety, made something contract painfully in Lily's chest. How could she reconcile the man who committed financial fraud with the one who ensured a 5-year-old boy had the proper life jacket? At the main entrance, Oliver was waiting for them beside an elegant black Range Rover. He wore surprisingly casual clothes, light chinos, a navy blue long-sleeved shirt rolled up to his elbows, and leather loafers. Without his usual formal suit, he looked younger and more approachable. "Good morning," he greeted, and Lily noticed something unusual in his expression, an almost childlike anticipation, as if he too had been anxiously awaiting this excursion. "Mr. Oliver," Isaac ran to him, stopping at the last moment, remembering the manners his mother had instilled in him. "Good morning, I'm very excited about the boat." "And I'm excited to show it to you," Oliver responded, affectionately tousling the boy's hair, a gesture of camaraderie Lily had never seen him make before. "Are you ready to become a sailor?" "Yes, Captain," Isaac responded, making an improvised military salute that drew a genuine laugh from Oliver. Lily approached more slowly, feeling a strange shyness. "Good morning, Mr. Vance. It's very kind of you to invite us." "Please, I think after all this time you could call me Oliver," he responded, his grey eyes meeting hers. "At least outside the mansion." "Oliver," she repeated, surprised by the intimacy that simple change seemed to create between them. The journey to the coast passed with Isaac's enthusiastic chatter, bombarding Oliver with questions about boats, fish, and everything related to water. To Lily's surprise, Oliver answered each question with infinite patience, sometimes elaborating explanations adapted to the boy's level of understanding, other times honestly admitting when he didn't know the answer. "We'll investigate that together when we get back," he would respond in those cases, treating Isaac with a respect that many adults don't grant to children. The ocean stretched like a brilliant blue mirror under the morning sun when they arrived at the exclusive yacht club, where Oliver kept his vessel moored. Unlike what Lily had imagined, it wasn't an ostentatious craft, but a classic sailboat of about 40 feet, elegant and well-maintained but far from the excesses that characterized many of the neighboring yachts. "It's beautiful," Lily commented sincerely as they approached the dock. "It belonged to my grandfather," Oliver explained, a note of nostalgia in his voice. "It's practically the only family possession I've kept. Everything else I've acquired myself." "What's it called?" asked Isaac, pointing to the name written on the stern that he couldn't yet read. "Freedom," Oliver replied, and Lily noticed something significant in the way he pronounced the word. "My grandfather used to say that on the water is where a man can be truly free. away from the expectations and obligations of dry land. Once aboard, Oliver transformed. The calculating businessman gave way to an experienced and enthusiastic navigator. With precise and confident movements, he prepared the vessel, explaining each step to Isaac, who watched everything with wide, enchanted eyes. "Sailing is an art, little one," he told him while adjusting the sheets. "It's not about fighting against the wind, but understanding its direction and using it to your advantage. Sometimes the direct path isn't the best path." Lily, seated on the deck with the sun gently warming her face, observed the interaction between them with a mixture of joy and sadness. In a different world, under different circumstances, this scene could have been the beginning of something beautiful. A man teaching a boy who yearned for a father figure, a woman allowing herself to open her heart again, a chosen family slowly forming. But not in this world, not in these circumstances. Not when in less than 24 hours, she would have to decide whether to destroy the life of the man who now smiled with genuine happiness as he taught her son how to properly hold a rudder. Once in open water, with the sails deployed capturing the breeze, Oliver let Isaac steer the boat under his watchful supervision, eliciting delighted shouts from the little one each time the vessel responded to his movements. "Look, Mom, I'm sailing." "You're doing very well, sweetheart," Lily responded, her smile mixing with the tears that threatened to form in her eyes. Oliver approached her, sitting beside her, while Isaac continued his maritime adventure, now inventing an elaborate story about pirates and hidden treasures. "He has an amazing imagination," commented Oliver, "and a natural curiosity to understand how things work. He'd make an excellent engineer someday." "Or a journalist," Lily responded without thinking, immediately feeling her body tense as she realized how revealing that observation could be. But Oliver simply nodded. "He has that ability to ask the precise questions, a valuable quality in any profession." They remained silent for a moment, contemplating the serene seascape surrounded by distant mountains and lush forests. "I wanted to thank you," Oliver finally said, his voice softer than usual. "For what?" asked Lily, genuinely surprised. "For allowing me to share time with Isaac, and with you." He paused as if searching for the right words. "I haven't had many opportunities to experience this. Simple moments without hidden agendas, without business strategies, without the constant calculation of profits and losses." Each word was like a small dagger to Lily's heart. If Oliver knew that she was precisely the one with the hidden agenda, most dangerous to him. "We all need these moments," she responded, trying to maintain her composure. "They're the ones that remind us why life is worth living." Oliver looked at her then, really looked at her, as if memorizing every detail of her face. "You know, I've been thinking a lot about what you said that night during the storm. About taking a new direction from where we are, not trying to turn back. And have you reached any conclusion?" asked Lily, her heart accelerating beyond her control. "I think so," he responded, his gaze momentarily shifting to Isaac before returning to her. "I've lived my entire adult life defined by my company, by the fortune I've accumulated, by the power I wield in certain circles. But in recent weeks, I've asked myself with increasing frequency, is that really who I am? Is that all I can be?" The vulnerability in his voice, so uncharacteristic of the ruthless Oliver Vance the world knew, made Lily feel the impulse to take his hand. She restrained herself, aware that any physical contact at that moment would only complicate her already confused feelings further. "It's never too late to rediscover yourself," she said instead. "To remember who you were before the world told you who you should be." Oliver smiled, a genuine smile that transformed his face, softening the worry lines that habitually marked his forehead. "That's a very poetic way of putting it, but I think you're right." The moment was interrupted by Isaac, who ran to them exclaiming that he had seen a huge fish jump near the boat. Oliver rose to investigate with him, leaving Lily immersed in her thoughts. The afternoon passed like a dream. They anchored in a small isolated cove, where they shared a picnic prepared by Oliver's personal chef. They swam in the crystal-clear waters, with Isaac secure between them, their laughter resonating in the still air. Oliver taught the boy to identify different types of clouds, inventing stories together about the shapes they saw in them. To any outside observer, they would have appeared to be a family. A real family, united by something deeper than blood, by choice, by affinity, by a silent mutual understanding. As the sun began to descend, tinting the sky with shades of orange and pink, they started their return. Isaac, exhausted by the day's emotions and activities, fell asleep in Lily's arms, while Oliver handled the sailboat with expert and silent movements so as not to wake the little one. "It's been a perfect day," Lily commented softly, caressing her sleeping son's hair. "For the first of many, I hope," Oliver responded, and there was something in his tone, an implicit question, a possibility floating between them that neither dared to explicitly name. Lily didn't answer. She couldn't. Not when she knew that tomorrow she would have to make a decision that could make any shared future impossible. Upon reaching the dock, Oliver carefully took Isaac from Lily's arms, carrying him to the car with a tenderness that contrasted with his usual public image. The boy barely moved, murmuring something unintelligible before sinking back into a deep sleep. During the journey back to the mansion, the silence inside the vehicle wasn't uncomfortable, but intimate, like that of two people who have shared something significant and are internally processing the experience. "Lily," Oliver said when they were nearly at the mansion, his voice almost a whisper so as not to wake Isaac. "There's something I need to tell you. Something important." Lily's heart skipped a beat. Was it possible that he knew the truth, that he had discovered her real identity? "What is it?" she asked, trying to make her voice sound normal. Oliver seemed to hesitate, something totally unusual for him. "It's not something to discuss while I'm driving. Could we talk later, when Isaac is in bed?" Lily nodded, feeling a mixture of fear and curiosity. So of course. Upon arriving at the mansion, Oliver insisted on carrying Isaac to his room. With surprising familiarity with the boy's bedtime routine, he helped Lily change him into his pajamas without fully waking him. When Isaac was tucked into his bed, Oliver leaned down and, after a brief hesitation, placed a gentle kiss on the little one's forehead. "Rest well, little sailor," he whispered. "Tomorrow we'll plan our next adventure." The gesture, so intimate and paternal, made Lily have to hold back tears. How had she arrived at this impossible situation? How could she betray this man who was clearly opening his heart to them? "I'll wait for you on the south garden terrace in half an hour," Oliver said as they left Isaac's room. "There are some things I think you should know." During the 30 minutes that followed, Lily remained seated on the edge of her son's bed, watching him sleep peacefully, completely oblivious to the emotional turmoil his mother was experiencing. What decision could she make that wouldn't harm someone? If she published her article, she would destroy Oliver and probably break Isaac's heart. If she didn't, she would betray her professional principles and all the years she had dedicated to exposing the truth, no matter how uncomfortable it might be. Finally, with a sigh that seemed to contain all the weight of her dilemma, she stood up. Whatever Oliver wanted to share with her, she would listen. She owed him that much, at least. The south garden terrace was softly illuminated by wrought iron lanterns that projected a warm and welcoming glow. Oliver stood by the balustrade, contemplating the nocturnal garden, a glass of what appeared to be whiskey in his hand. He had changed from his casual clothes into dark pants and a simple white shirt, unbuttoned at the neck without a tie. Hearing her footsteps, he turned. His expression was impossible to read in the dim light. "Thank you for coming," he said, offering her a glass he had prepared for her. "I wasn't sure if you preferred wine or whiskey, so I took the liberty of pouring you a Cabernet from my personal cellar." Lily accepted the glass, needing something to hold on to more than from a desire to drink. "Thank you." A silence settled between them, broken only by the nocturnal sounds of the garden, the occasional chirp of a cricket, the soft murmur of the breeze among the tree leaves. "What did you want to talk to me about?" Lily finally asked, unable to bear the tension. Oliver took a long sip of his whiskey, as if gathering strength. "I've made some important decisions in the last few days, decisions that will affect my future, that of my company." He made a significant pause. "And potentially yours and Isaac's." Lily felt time stop. The garden, the night, the entire world seemed to contract until it was reduced to this instant, to this shared space between them. "What kind of decisions?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Oliver placed his glass on the balustrade and turned completely to face her, his face now visible in the soft light of the lanterns. There was a determination in his eyes that Lily recognized. It was the same expression she had seen in photographs of him closing transcendental business deals. But there was something else, an underlying vulnerability he had never before shown publicly. I'm going to voluntarily turn myself in to the tax authorities, he declared with a firm voice. I'm going to acknowledge the irregularities committed in recent years and accept the corresponding legal consequences. The declaration left Lily momentarily speechless. Of all the possibilities she had imagined, this was perhaps the last she would have expected. But why? She finally managed to articulate. You have lawyers, contacts, resources to fight any accusation. Precisely because of that, Oliver responded with a sad smile. I've always used my power and my money to elude the consequences of my actions, to create my own rules, and in the process, I've become someone I no longer recognize when I look in the mirror. He took a few steps across the terrace, as if the movement helped him organize his thoughts. For years I told myself that the ends justified the means, that rules were made to be bent by those with sufficient determination. I built an empire based on that philosophy, and convinced myself that success validated my methods. He stopped, looking at the starry night sky. And then you two came into my life, a boy who sees the world with absolute wonder and honesty, a woman who has faced adversities without compromising her values, and I began to question everything. Each word was like a stab to Lily's heart. The irony was almost cruel. Oliver saw her as a model of integrity when, in reality, she had lied about her identity, had infiltrated his home under false pretenses, had planned to expose his secrets to the world. Oliver, she began, not knowing how to continue. Let me finish, please, he requested, his voice surprisingly soft. I've consulted with my lawyers. The consequences will be significant. Millions in fines, probably some time in prison, even if it's in one of those minimum security facilities for white-collar criminals. He let out a humorless laugh. The company will survive. I've designed a structure that will allow it to continue operating under Thomas's direction during my absence. Is Thomas in agreement with this? Asked Lily, remembering the CFO's vehement opposition to any admission of guilt. No, admitted Oliver. In fact, he thinks I've lost my mind. He says I'm destroying everything we've built for feelings he considers temporary. Something in the way he pronounced the word feelings made Lily hold her breath. What feelings? Oliver looked at her directly then, his grey eyes reflecting the light from the lanterns. Those I've developed for you and for Isaac. The world seemed to stop completely. Lily felt a buzzing in her ears, as if her body physically couldn't process what she was hearing. I know this must seem sudden, Oliver continued, interpreting her silence as confusion or rejection, and I'd completely understand if you don't share these feelings. I'm not looking for an immediate answer. I just wanted you to know the truth before everything changes. What exactly are you saying, Oliver? Asked Lily, needing absolute clarity. I'm saying that I've fallen in love with you, he responded with surprising simplicity, as if he were stating an obvious fact, and that I've come to love your son as if he were my own. These feelings are new to me, and I'm still learning to navigate them, but they're strong enough to make me reevaluate my entire life, all my priorities. He took a step toward her, though maintaining a respectful distance. I'm also saying that regardless of how you respond to this confession, I've made the decision to face the consequences of my past actions, because I want to be a different man, someone who deserves the respect of people like you, someone Isaac could someday be proud of. Lily felt tears beginning to form in her eyes. The sincerity in Oliver's voice, the vulnerability in his gaze, everything indicated he was being completely honest. And that honesty made her own duplicity all the more unbearable. There's something you don't know about me, she finally said, her voice breaking slightly. Something that could completely change the way you see me. Oliver's expression became serious, but not fearful. I'm listening. Lily took a deep breath, knowing that once she spoke, there would be no going back. My real name is Lily Fontaine. I'm an investigative journalist for the Meridian. I've been working undercover in your house for these 3 months, gathering information for an article about your company's tax practices. She expected shock, anger, betrayal on Oliver's face. Instead, what she saw was an unsettling calm, as if somehow he already knew or had suspected it. El Virtue, he said after a moment, a clever anagram of your name. You knew? Asked Lily, astonished. I suspected, admitted Oliver. Not specifically that you were a journalist, but I knew there was something more to your presence here. No one with your level of education and articulation dedicates themselves to domestic cleaning without an ulterior motive, and some of your questions were too precise, too specific. Why didn't you say anything? Why didn't you fire me? Oliver gave a melancholic smile. At first, out of curiosity, I wanted to see exactly what you were looking for. Then, he paused, his expression softening. Then I simply didn't want you to leave. Neither you nor Isaac. Even knowing you probably had hidden motives, the joy you brought to this empty house was too valuable to give up. I was planning to destroy you, confessed Lily, tears now flowing freely. I was going to expose all your tax irregularities, all the offshore schemes, everything. And you had every right to do so, Oliver responded with surprising equanimity. Those are the consequences of my actions. I can't blame you for doing your job. How can you be so calm? Asked Lily, disconcerted by his reaction. I just confessed I've been lying to you this whole time. And I just confessed that I committed tax fraud, Oliver pointed out with a slight smile. Neither of us is perfect, Lily. We all have our complexities, our contradictions. He took another step toward her, and this time gently took her hands in his. The question now is, what do we do with the truth? Where do we go from here? Lily's response was interrupted by the sound of hurried footsteps. They both turned to see Thomas Lawrence approaching the terrace, his face a mask of barely contained fury. So it was true, he spat, looking at Lily with contempt. Your virtue. Oliver released Lily's hands and interposed himself slightly between her and Thomas. Lawrence, this isn't the time. It's not the time? The incredulity in Thomas's voice was palpable. This woman has been spying on us, Oliver. She's gathered information that could send us to prison, and you're here, apparently confessing your feelings to her? You've completely lost your mind. My sanity is perfectly intact, Oliver responded coldly, and I've already made my decision. I'll turn myself in to the authorities tomorrow. I won't allow it, exclaimed Thomas. I won't stand by with folded arms while you destroy everything we've worked for over an affair with an undercover journalist. It's not an affair, Oliver corrected, his voice acquiring a steel edge, and my decision isn't open to debate. Thomas ran a hand through his hair, visibly agitated. Do you realize that you're in love with a woman who was planning to destroy you publicly? What kind of sick relationship is that? One based on truth, now that all the cards are on the table, Oliver responded calmly. Something that you and I know very little about after so many years of deception. Thomas's eyes narrowed, and he turned to Lily. And you? What do you get out of all this? A promotion, a journalism award, or simply the satisfaction of seeing a powerful man fall? Before Lily could respond, Thomas pulled out his cell phone. I just sent all the files about your undercover activities to our legal team. By tomorrow, we'll have prepared a lawsuit for defamation, invasion of privacy, and corporate espionage that will destroy your career and that of anyone associated with you at the Meridian. Enough, Thomas! Oliver's voice resonated across the terrace. Withdraw that threat immediately. You're defending her? After what she's done to you. She hasn't done anything to me that I didn't deserve, Oliver responded. She was simply seeking the truth, something that you and I have been burying for too long. A tense silence ensued. Thomas's expression shifted from fury to something more calculating, colder. I see I can't make you see reason, he finally said. But remember that I tried to protect you even from yourself. With these words, Thomas turned and left, his footsteps resonating loudly on the marble of the terrace. When they were alone again, Lily felt physically exhausted, as if she had run a marathon. I'm so sorry, she murmured. I never wanted things to reach this point. Oliver turned to her, and to her surprise, there was a slight smile on his lips. You know what's most ironic about all this? That although it began with a lie, you've been the catalyst for the greatest honesty I've experienced in decades. What's going to happen now? Asked Lily, her voice barely audible. Tomorrow, I'll present myself to the authorities as I had planned, Oliver responded. I'll confess my crimes and accept the consequences. And your article? He asked, gesturing toward the mansion, toward where Thomas had disappeared. His threats. I won't publish the article, Lily decided. There's no point in exposing something you yourself are going to confess. Oliver nodded slowly. What will happen with your job, with your career? I'll probably lose it, admitted Lily. Nathan, my editor, won't be exactly delighted when I tell him we won't be publishing after 3 months of investigation and invested resources. I'm sorry, said Oliver, and he seemed sincerely sorry. I never wanted to cause you professional problems. It's my decision, Lily responded firmly, and I believe it's the right one. They remained silent for a moment, processing everything that had occurred, the truths revealed, the decisions made. You still haven't answered my other question, Oliver finally said, his voice soft but firm. Which one? Asked Lily, though she believed she knew what he was referring to. About my feelings for you and for Isaac. About the possibility of a future together, despite all this. Or perhaps precisely because of all this. Lily looked at him, really looked at him, seeing not the billionaire, not the target of her investigation, but the man who had found the courage to change, to face his mistakes, to open his heart. I think, she said slowly, carefully choosing her words, that we both have a lot to process before we can make a decision like that. You've shaken the foundations of your life, and I've just revealed a truth that completely changes our relationship. We need time. Time, repeated Oliver, nodding with understanding. Of course, and probably space as well. I imagine you'll want to move out of the mansion as soon as possible. It would be most appropriate, Lily agreed, especially considering what will happen tomorrow. I don't want Isaac to be exposed to all the media frenzy that your confession will surely provoke. You're right, Oliver conceded, though disappointment was visible in his eyes. I'll make arrangements for you to move first thing tomorrow morning. I have an apartment in the city that you can use for as long as you need. That's not necessary, Lily began to protest. Please, Oliver insisted, at least let me ensure that you're comfortable while I face what's coming. Something in the way he said it, the resignation mixed with determination, made Lily feel a wave of emotion she couldn't contain. Without thinking, she moved closer to him and embraced him, feeling how his body momentarily tensed with surprise before relaxing and returning her embrace. Thank you, she whispered against his chest, for understanding, for not hating me. I could never hate you, he responded, his voice resonating against her ear. You and Isaac have reminded me what it is to be human. It's the most valuable gift I've received in a long time. They remained that way for a moment, wrapped in an embrace that seemed to contain all the complexities, contradictions, and possibilities of their relationship. When they finally separated, both knew that something fundamental had changed between them, though neither was sure where that change would lead them. I should go check if Isaac is all right, Lily said, taking a step back. Oliver nodded. Of course, and I should finish some preparations for tomorrow. Before Lily could leave, Oliver gently took her hand. Whatever happens, he said with intensity, I want you to know that I don't regret having met you, not a single moment. Lily felt tears returning to her eyes. Neither do I, she responded with sincerity. Despite everything, neither do I. With these words they parted, each heading to face the consequences of the revealed truths, but both feeling, somehow inexplicably, that they had found something genuine amidst all the falsehoods. The news arrived on a Tuesday morning, almost exactly 6 months after Thomas's call. Lily was preparing breakfast when her phone rang with an unknown number. Lily Fontaine, a formal, professional voice. Yes, that's me. I'm calling from the law office of Mitchell and Associates. We represent Mr. Oliver Vance. Lily felt her heart accelerate. Yes? I'm pleased to inform you that Mr. Vance's parole request has been approved. He will be released this Friday. The simplicity of the announcement dramatically contrasted with its importance. After almost 2 years, Oliver would return to the outside world, return, potentially, to their lives. Thank you for informing me, Lily managed to respond, her mind already spinning with implications and possibilities. Mr. Vance specifically asked if you and your son would be willing to receive him on Saturday at your apartment. He would perfectly understand if you prefer not to. No, Lily quickly responded. I mean, yes, we would be delighted to receive him. After hanging up, Lily realized that Isaac was watching her from the kitchen entrance, his large, curious eyes fixed on her. Was it about Uncle Oliver, he asked, with that surprising intuition he sometimes showed. Lily nodded, unable to contain a smile. Yes, sweetheart. His long journey is ending. He'll come visit us on Saturday. The expression of pure joy on Isaac's face was enough to dispel any doubt she might have had about the decision. During these 2 years, Despite the physical separation, Oliver had maintained a constant presence in the boy's life through letters, small gifts sent on special dates, and the stories Lily told him. For Isaac, Uncle Oliver had become an almost mythological figure, a hero on a distant adventure who would someday return. And now that return was imminent. Saturday dawned with perfect clarity, as if the universe itself wanted to celebrate the reunion. Lily found herself inexplicably nervous, changing clothes 3 times before deciding on a simple blue dress, comfortable but elegant. Isaac, for his part, had insisted on wearing his special clothes, a small ensemble that mimicked the formal style that he remembered Oliver used to wear. "Do you think he'll recognize me?" the boy asked while Lily tried to tame his rebellious curls with a comb. "I've grown a lot." "He'll recognize you instantly," Lily assured him. "You've grown, yes, but you're still you." The doorbell rang punctually at 11 in the morning. Lily took a deep breath, trying to calm the nerves fluttering in her stomach. Isaac ran to the door but waited patiently for his mother to open it, as he had been taught. And there stood Oliver Vance. The 2 years in prison had left visible marks. He was thinner, with shorter hair and completely grey at the temples. Additional lines had formed around his eyes and mouth, but it was his eyes that had changed the most. Softer, warmer, with a serenity they hadn't possessed before. He wore simple clothes, dark pants and a white long-sleeved shirt without a tie. In his hands, he carried a package wrapped in bright blue paper and a bouquet of wildflowers. "Hello," he said simply, his voice slightly hoarse. Before Lily could respond, Isaac stepped forward. "Uncle Oliver," he said with the formality he reserved for occasions he considered important. "Welcome back." Something in those simple words seemed to break an invisible barrier. Oliver knelt, coming to the boy's height, and extended the package. "I brought you something, little sailor." To continue our interrupted lesson, Isaac opened the package enthusiastically, revealing a beautiful travel chess set with hand-carved pieces. "It's beautiful," he exclaimed, reverently running his fingers over the pieces. "I had plenty of time to practice wood carving," Oliver explained with a smile. "I made each piece thinking of you, of the stories I could tell you about them." Finally, Oliver stood up and looked at Lily. "And these are for you," he said, offering her the bouquet. Wildflowers, like those that grow freely, following their own nature rather than a gardener's expectations. Lily took the flowers, feeling the brush of his fingers against hers. "They're beautiful. Thank you." The moment seemed suspended in time, laden with unspoken words, with feelings contained during 2 years of separation. "May I come in?" Oliver finally asked, breaking the spell. "Of course," Lily exclaimed, realizing they had left him on the threshold. "I'm sorry, how rude of me." "Don't apologize," he responded softly as he entered. "I perfectly understand how strange all this must be." The morning passed with surprising naturalness. They shared a brunch that Lily had prepared, while Isaac monopolized the conversation, eager to update Oliver on every aspect of his life during the past 2 years. Oliver listened with genuine attention, asking questions, laughing at the boy's anecdotes, showing himself impressed with his school achievements. When Isaac finally tired and retired to play with his new chess set in his room, Oliver and Lily were left alone on the balcony, contemplating the city under the midday sun. "It's beautiful," Oliver commented, looking around the apartment. "You've really turned it into a home." "It took us a while, but yes," Lily responded. "Isaac needed stability after so many changes." "He's an extraordinary boy," said Oliver. "You've done an admirable job raising him alone." "I haven't been completely alone," Lily admitted. "Your letters, the gifts you sent, the stories Isaac waited for each month. You've been a constant presence despite the physical distance." Oliver nodded, his gaze momentarily lost in the horizon. "It kept me sane, you know, thinking of you both, imagining this reunion. Even when I wasn't sure if you'd ever allow me back into your lives, the possibility gave me hope." A silence ensued, not uncomfortable, but expectant, as if they both knew they had reached a crucial moment. "And now what?" Lily finally asked. "What are your plans?" "Honestly, I'm not sure," Oliver responded. "I'm still a very wealthy man despite the fines. I could retire, travel, live comfortably without ever working again. But that doesn't seem enough." "The foundation is doing wonderful work," Lily commented. "You could get more directly involved now." "I'd like that, yes," Oliver nodded. But there's something more important I need to resolve first. He paused as if gathering courage. My feelings for you and for Isaac haven't changed, Lily. If anything, these 2 years have strengthened them, crystallized them. But I understand that you might have moved on. Lily looked at him directly, seeing the vulnerability he now openly showed, so different from the powerful businessman she had initially met. There hasn't been anyone else, she said simply. There couldn't be anyone else when my heart had already made its decision, even before I consciously recognized it. The hope that illuminated Oliver's face was almost palpable. What exactly are you saying? I'm saying that perhaps we could try, Lily responded, not hastily but step by step, getting to know each other really, without lies or hidden agendas, seeing if what began in such improbable circumstances can flourish now on honest ground. Oliver slowly extended his hand across the table, leaving it there, a wordless invitation. Lily interlaced her fingers with his, feeling the warmth of his skin, the new calluses formed during his time in prison. I would like that more than anything in the world, he said, his voice barely a whisper. At that moment, Isaac returned to the balcony, his face lighting up at seeing their intertwined hands. Without commenting anything, he simply approached and placed his small hand over theirs, forming a bridge between past and future. 5 years later, the grand auditorium at Columbia University was packed to capacity. Families, teachers, authorities, and journalists occupied every available seat for the National Young Writers Contest Awards ceremony. In the front row, Oliver and Lily Vance watched with unbridled pride as Isaac, now a 16-year-old, ascended to the stage to receive the first-place award in the youth category. Please give a warm welcome to Isaac Foster Vance, author of the essay Reflections of the Soul, Redemption and Transformation in the Digital Age, announced the Master of Ceremonies. Applause echoed through the auditorium as the young man, tall and lean like his adoptive father, but with his mother's expressive dark eyes, approached the microphone. Wearing a simple yet elegant suit, Isaac discreetly adjusted his tie, a gesture he had unconsciously inherited from Oliver, before beginning to speak. First, I'd like to thank the judging committee for this recognition, he began with a clear, confident voice that tugged at Lily's heart. When had her little boy grown so much? But mainly I want to thank my parents, who taught me the most valuable lesson a young person can learn in these times, that our stories aren't defined by our mistakes, but by how we respond to them. In the audience, Oliver, now with completely grey hair but maintaining the same imposing posture as always, firmly held Lily's hand. His face, though marked by the years, radiated a pride and serenity few would have imagined possible in the once ruthless businessman. Lily, whose work as editor-in-chief of Transformation magazine had earned her 2 journalism awards in recent years, felt tears threatening to overflow as she watched her son speak with such discernment and maturity. My essay explores how, in the age of social media and constant exposure, we make the mistake of believing our identities are fixed and immutable, Isaac continued. We construct personas online and offline and become imprisoned by them, fearing that any change will be seen as inauthenticity or weakness. He paused briefly, his eyes finding his parents in the audience before continuing. But true authenticity isn't in remaining the same forever. It's in the courage to evolve, to recognize our mistakes and grow through them. It's in the vulnerability of showing not just who we are, but who we're becoming. The words resonated deeply with everyone present, but especially with Oliver and Lily, who knew better than anyone the personal journey that had inspired those reflections. After the ceremony, several journalists approached, eager to interview not just the award-winning young man, but also his parents. After all, the story of Oliver Vance's transformation and his marriage to the journalist who had originally planned to expose him had become almost legendary in American business and media circles. Isaac, your essay mentions the courage to evolve. Was this idea inspired by your parents' story? Asked a reporter from a major newspaper. The young man smiled, that smile that so reminded Lily of her own in her most sincere moments. My parents aren't just my theoretical inspiration. They're living proof that genuine transformation is possible, but I think it's important to emphasize that they never used their story to promote themselves or create a convenient narrative. They simply lived according to their values, day after day. Mr. Vance, another journalist addressed Oliver, looking back after all these years, is there anything you would do differently? Oliver reflected for a moment before responding. I'd like to say I regret the mistakes of the past, but the truth is more complex. If I hadn't followed exactly that path, with all its detours and failures, I wouldn't have arrived at this moment. I wouldn't have this extraordinary family. He paused, his expression softening. What I truly wish is that more people would understand that it's never too late to change direction. Mrs. Vance, a young reporter asked Lily, as a journalist, how do you balance the pursuit of truth with the empathy you clearly advocate in your magazine? Lily smiled, appreciating the depth of the question. The true pursuit of truth is never in opposition to empathy. In fact, we can't really understand the truth of a situation or a person without the willingness to see beyond the surface, to understand the deeper contexts and motivations. That's what I learned in my own journey, that truth without compassion can be as harmful as lies. As the interviews continued, Thomas Lawrence discreetly approached the group. Now chairman of the board of the Vance Foundation, having left direct management of the corporation some years earlier, Thomas had become not just a business ally, but a true friend of the family. Am I interrupting? He asked with a smile. Not at all, Oliver responded, taking the opportunity to gently end the interviews. In fact, we have reservations for a celebratory dinner. If you'll excuse us. As they moved away, Thomas leaned in to whisper to Isaac, Impressive speech, kid. But you know your dad's going to be quoting phrases from it for the next few months, right? Isaac laughed. I'm used to it. He still quotes things I said when I was 5. Only because you were as wise then as you are now, Oliver defended himself with a smile. Just a bit shorter. The restaurant they had chosen was elegant without being ostentatious, a reflection of the new lifestyle the family had adopted, comfortable but far from the excesses that had characterized Oliver's former existence. Besides Thomas, Harriet, the former housekeeper, now a beloved surrogate grandmother to Isaac, had been invited, along with Nathan Quinn and his wife. Over the years, the family's inner circle had expanded to include people who shared their values and appreciated their journey without judgment. During dinner, while the adults chatted animatedly, Isaac noticed a familiar figure entering the restaurant. Sophia Armstrong, now with completely white hair but still maintaining the impeccable elegance that had always characterized her, approached their table. I hope I'm not interrupting, she said, but I couldn't help but congratulate the young award-winning writer. I read your essay, Isaac. It's extraordinary. Thank you, Ms. Armstrong, the young man responded with genuine politeness. Over the years, Sophia had become an occasional though distant presence in the family's life, not exactly a close friend, but no longer an adversary either. Sophia, join us, invited Oliver, rising to pull out a chair for her. Just for a moment, she agreed, sitting gracefully. Actually, I have a gift for Isaac. From her elegant purse, she withdrew a small wrapped package. Open it when you're alone, she suggested, with an enigmatic smile. Later that night, when the family returned home, Isaac finally opened Sophia's gift. It was a beautiful kaleidoscope, very similar to the one Oliver had given him so many years ago, but with a more sophisticated design. Accompanying it was a card that simply said, "To remember that the same reality can be seen in infinite different ways, depending on how light passes through it. Congratulations on your extraordinary talent." Essay. Isaac smiled, appreciating the symbolism of the gift. He carefully placed it on his shelf, next to the original kaleidoscope, which he still kept as a treasure, though it was somewhat worn from frequent use over the years. On the house's terrace, Oliver and Lily shared a quiet moment after the day's emotions. The night was clear, with an almost full moon illuminating the well-tended garden below. "He's growing up so fast," Lily commented, leaning against her husband's shoulder. "Soon he'll be in college, following his own path." "And what an impressive path it will be," Oliver responded. "Sometimes I wonder how we got so lucky." Lily reflected for a moment. "I don't think it was luck, exactly. I think it was choices. Some conscious, others guided by something deeper within us. The choice to be honest with each other, even when it was painful. The choice to prioritize what really mattered, instead of what the world said should matter." Oliver nodded, pulling her closer. "Remember that conversation during the storm, when you said happiness was in the small moments?" "I remember," she smiled. "You seemed so skeptical at the time." "Because I couldn't understand how something so simple could fill the void I felt," he admitted. Now I understand that it's not the moments themselves, but the meaning they carry, the connection, the purpose. From Isaac's room, they heard the soft sound of his guitar, a hobby he had developed in recent years, and in which he showed considerable talent. The melody, sweet and contemplative, floated through the night like a perfect soundtrack for the moment. "You know what impresses me most about our son?" Oliver asked after some moments of comfortable silence. "What?" "How he manages to see the best in everyone, even knowing their flaws. How he forgives easily, without diminishing the importance of responsibility. It's as if he was born with a wisdom that took me decades to begin to comprehend." Lily smiled thoughtfully. "Perhaps it's because he grew up seeing that people are more than their worst actions or decisions. He saw firsthand how someone can transform completely when they find a purpose greater than themselves. Or when they find someone who sees them as they could be, not just as they are," added Oliver, looking at her with affection. The guitar melody changed to something more structured. Isaac was composing again, a process that often kept him up late into the night. "He's writing a song about us, you know," Lily revealed. "I heard some excerpts the other day. It's called Reflections." Oliver felt a deep emotion upon hearing this. It was appropriate, he thought, that his son would capture through music what they had lived through, the way they had reflected each other, seeing beyond the masks and facades to the vulnerable and imperfect souls behind them. "We saw each other when no one else did," he murmured, recalling his own journey. "Beyond appearances, beyond the roles we played. And that's what true love does," Lily concluded softly. "It sees what's hidden. It recognizes dormant potential. It reflects back not just who we are, but who we can become." As the night progressed and stars shone over the city, the Vance family rested in peace. Not the peace of perfection or the absence of challenges, but the deep peace that comes from living authentically, loving genuinely, and transforming even the greatest mistakes into opportunities for growth. The journey that had begun with lies and hidden agendas had blossomed into a life of shared purpose and lived truth, and at the center of that transformation was the most valuable lesson they had learned together, that in the reflections of each other's souls, we can find not just who we truly are, but also who we can become. The first months of marriage brought Oliver and Lily the sweet reality of building a life together. They moved into a spacious but not ostentatious house in a tree-lined neighborhood of Greenwich, Connecticut, a conscious decision by Oliver to distance himself from the excessively luxurious environment of his former mansion, which represented a phase of his life he preferred to leave behind. Isaac's adoption process was finalized without complications, as his biological father had formally relinquished any rights to the boy years earlier. The day when Isaac officially became Isaac Foster, Vance was celebrated with a small picnic in Central Park, just the three of them and a few close friends. "How does it feel being officially a Vance?" Oliver asked the boy, as they helped set up the kites that would be flown that day. Isaac reflected for a moment, with that seriousness that sometimes surprised adults. "Not much different," he answered honestly. "I already felt like your son even before the paper said so." The profound simplicity of the response moved Oliver more than any elaborate declaration could have. He embraced the boy, silently thanking fate for placing this child in his life. Lily, observing the scene from a few yards away while arranging the picnic blanket, felt a wave of gratitude course through her body. The journey that had brought them here had been filled with unexpected turns, lies that transformed into truths, and a connection that had overcome all barriers. Work at the Vance Foundation occupied much of both their time. Oliver had completely transformed the organization's focus, directing it not just toward traditional social causes, but especially toward programs for reintegrating former inmates and supporting single-parent families. Lily, with her journalistic experience, led the communications department, ensuring absolute transparency in all the Foundation's activities, a marked contrast to the opacity that had characterized Oliver's former business dealings. "When we published the quarterly report showing exactly how every cent is applied, some people thought I was crazy," Oliver commented during a dinner. "They said no foundation linked to major businessmen did that." "And what did you reply?" Lily asked, though she could already imagine. "That this was exactly the problem," Oliver smiled. "If more organizations were genuinely transparent, perhaps we'd have a less unequal and fairer society." Thomas Lawrence, who had initially resisted the radical changes in Oliver's life and philosophy, had gradually become an ally. He still directed Vance Corporation, but now under new ethical principles rigorously implemented. The weekly meetings with Oliver to discuss business directions often ended with long conversations about purpose and meaning, topics that would have been unthinkable in the former professional relationship between the two. One evening, while Lily was checking Isaac's homework and Oliver was reviewing foundation projects in the living room, the phone rang. Oliver answered, and his expression gradually shifted from curiosity to concern. "I understand," he said. "Yes, we'll handle it. Thank you for letting me know." When he hung up, Lily immediately realized something serious had happened. "What is it?" "Sophia Armstrong," Oliver answered, running a hand through his grey hair. "She's preparing a memoir about the corporate world. Apparently there's an entire chapter dedicated to me and the questionable methods I used to build my empire. But that's not news to anyone," Lily observed. "You yourself confessed everything and served your sentence." "The problem isn't the facts themselves," Oliver explained. "It's the angle she's using. According to my contact at the publisher, Sophia is portraying everything as if my transformation were just a public relations strategy. A calculated plan to rehabilitate my image after we realized the investigations were closing in." Lily felt a wave of indignation. "That's absurd. How can she insinuate something like that without knowing your personal journey?" "Sophia has always been extremely perceptive in business, but she has a rather cynical view of human nature," Oliver sighed. "For her, it's probably inconceivable that someone might actually change for genuine reasons." "What are we going to do?" Lily asked, automatically including herself in the problem. It was like that now. The challenges of one were faced by both. "I'm not sure," Oliver admitted. "Part of me wants to ignore it completely. After all, I've faced much worse criticism and survived. But another part worries about the impact this could have on the foundation. And on Isaac." The mention of their son made both instinctively look at the boy, now 8 years old, concentrating on his books, oblivious to the adults' conversation. "He'll start hearing things at school," Lily said softly. "Comments, gossip, maybe even taunts." "Exactly what I don't want for him," Oliver agreed, the concern evident on his face. "When I decided to take responsibility for my mistakes, I was prepared to face the consequences personally. But the idea of Isaac suffering because of it—" Lily moved closer, sitting beside her husband and taking his hands in hers. "We'll face this together, like everything else. Isaac is a strong, intelligent child, and he has something many others don't have, the truth told by his own parents. He knows who you were and who you've become." That night after Isaac went to bed, Oliver and Lily discussed their options at length. Could they try to prevent publication through legal action? Negotiate with Sophia? Simply ignore it and hope the impact would be minimal? "I think I know what we need to do," Lily finally said. "Something I perhaps should have done a long time ago." Oliver looked at her questioningly. "I'm going to write the article I never wrote," she explained. "Not the exposé I originally planned, but an honest account of the entire journey. Our journey, from beginning to end." "Do you really want to revisit all that?" Oliver asked, surprised. "I thought you preferred to leave your past as an investigative journalist behind." "It's not about the past," Lily responded with conviction. "It's about telling our story before others distort it. It's about showing that redemption is possible, that people can really change when they find something or someone that inspires them to be better." Looking at his wife, Oliver felt that familiar wave of admiration that often surprised him. Lily always managed to see clearly the path forward when he felt confused or lost. "If that's what you want to do, you have my full support," he said. "But there's something else," Lily added. "I want to invite Sophia for a conversation, just the three of us, before anything is published. Do you think she'd accept?" "I think so," Lily responded. "If not out of genuine openness, at least out of curiosity. Sophia has always seemed fascinated by you in one way or another." The next morning, as they prepared breakfast, Oliver and Lily decided to talk with Isaac. They firmly believed that honesty was fundamental in raising their son, even when it came to delicate matters. "Son, we need to talk to you about something important," Oliver began, sitting at the kitchen table while Isaac finished his fruit smoothie. With patience and age-appropriate words, but without softening the essential truth, they explained that someone they knew was writing a book that might contain negative information about Oliver, and perhaps about the family. "Like those stories you told me about before I was born?" asked Isaac. referring to the conversations they had had about Oliver's past in business. "When you did things you shouldn't have with money." "Yes," Oliver responded, impressed as always with the boy's ability to get right to the point. "And it's possible that some children at school or their parents might comment about it. They might say unpleasant things." Isaac appeared to reflect seriously for a moment, his large dark eyes fixed on his almost empty plate. "But you already paid for what you did, didn't you? You went to prison and everything." "Yes, son," confirmed Oliver. "And now you help people with the foundation," continued the boy, as if mentally organizing the facts. "And you taught me that when we do something wrong, we have to take responsibility and fix what we can." Lily felt her eyes filling with tears. Isaac's capacity to understand complex concepts like redemption and responsibility always amazed her. "That's exactly right," she agreed. Isaac shrugged with that childlike simplicity that often reduced complicated adult issues to their essence. "Then I don't care what they say. I know who my real father is." In that moment, Oliver understood that, regardless of what Sophia Armstrong or anyone else might write or say about his past, he had already won what truly mattered: the love and respect of his family. The meeting with Sophia Armstrong was scheduled for a Tuesday afternoon in the neutral office of a mediator, at Lily's suggestion. She knew that meeting at their home or at Sophia's office would automatically create a power imbalance that could compromise the conversation. When the couple arrived, Sophia was already waiting for them, impeccably dressed as always, her platinum hair now cut in a modern bob that further accentuated her aristocratic features. "Oliver." "Lily," she greeted them with polite coldness. "I must admit I was surprised by the invitation. I thought you'd be busier preparing legal injunctions against my book." "We're not here to prevent your publication, Sophia," Oliver calmly responded. "We came to talk." The woman arched a perfectly delineated eyebrow. "Talk? About what, exactly?" "About the truth," Lily intervened, "and about the difference between revealing facts and manipulating them to serve a preconceived narrative." Sophia studied Lily with renewed interest. The journalist talking about manipulating facts. Ironic, considering how you infiltrated Oliver's life. "That's exactly why I'm here," Lily responded without being intimidated. "Because I know both sides. I know what it's like to build a story based on selective facts to create a specific impact. And I know what it's like to discover that reality is much more complex and nuanced than any simplistic narrative." Over the next 2 hours, the three engaged in an intense and sometimes painful conversation. Oliver spoke openly about his mistakes, his past motivations, his transformation. Lily shared her own journey of ethical questioning and how she had reached the conclusion that justice didn't necessarily mean public destruction. "What are you suggesting then?" Sophia finally asked. "That I abandon the chapter about you?" "No," Oliver responded. "We're suggesting that you tell the complete story, not just the part that aligns with your cynical view of the corporate world. Include my mistakes, certainly, but also include what came after, not as a public relations strategy, but as a genuine journey of redemption." "And why would I do that?" Sophia questioned. "Because you've always prided yourself on your commitment to truth, even when it's uncomfortable," Oliver replied. "It was what I most admired about you, even during our worst disagreements." Something subtly changed in Sophia's expression, a brief flash of surprise, perhaps even nostalgia. "You never told me that before." "There were many things I couldn't say or admit back then," Oliver confessed. After a moment of contemplative silence, Sophia reopened her portfolio and took out some printed pages, the proofs of the chapter about Oliver. "Perhaps I'm willing to revise some passages," she conceded with a slight smile, "but don't expect a glorified profile. I'll continue mentioning the offshore schemes, the questionable fiscal maneuvers, the occasionally cruel treatment of competitors." "We wouldn't expect anything less," Lily assured. "We just ask that you also mention what came after. The voluntary confession when he could have used his power and influence to escape the consequences. The work at the foundation, the genuine transformation." Sophia studied the couple for a long moment. "You know what's really fascinating? I actually believe that you believe this, that it's not just a convenient narrative. It's the truth, Sophia," Oliver stated simply. "The truth," she repeated, as if savoring the word. Such an elusive concept in the world we live in. She closed her portfolio with a decisive movement. "I'll consider your arguments, I don't promise anything, but I'll reflect. When they left the meeting, Lily wasn't sure if they had made any real progress. Do you think she'll change anything? She asked as they walked to the car. I don't know, Oliver admitted. But we did what we could. We offered our truth. The rest is beyond our control. Doesn't that worry you? Living with this uncertainty? Oliver smiled, taking Lily's hand in his. There was a time when I needed to control everything and everyone around me. Now I understand that there's a certain freedom in accepting that we can't control how others see us or what they think of us. We can only be true to ourselves and to the people we love. Lily felt a wave of pride for the man Oliver had become. This philosophy of acceptance and inner peace was worlds away from the ruthless controller he had been when she first met him. In the weeks that followed, Lily dedicated herself to writing her article, a long and nuanced narrative she titled Reflections of the Soul, A Journey of Transformation. She worked in the early morning hours, before the house awoke, or at night after Isaac fell asleep. Oliver respected this creative space, knowing how important it was for her to process her entire experience through writing. The article was published in Horizon magazine, a respected publication known for its in-depth features. The response was surprisingly positive, generating a constructive debate about redemption, restorative justice, and the possibility of genuine personal transformation. 2 weeks after publication, as they were having dinner as a family, the phone rang. It was Thomas, sounding unusually excited. Have you seen Sophia's interview on 60 Minutes? It's airing right now. Quickly, Oliver turned on the living room TV. Sophia appeared elegantly dressed, speaking about her new book. One of the chapters that has generated the most buzz in preview is the one dealing with businessman Oliver Vance, commented the host. You had a close relationship with him in the past, correct? Yes, confirmed Sophia. And I must say that of all the profiles in the book, his underwent the most significant revision before final publication. How so? Asked the host, clearly intrigued. Initially, I had approached Oliver's transformation with great skepticism, explained Sophia. I saw everything as a calculated public relations strategy. But after some recent conversations and deep reflection, I realized I was projecting my own cynicism onto a story that deserved a more nuanced look. The couple exchanged astonished glances as Sophia continued. I'm not softening the mistakes he made, and there were many. But I also recognize that unlike most powerful people who face scandals, Oliver chose a path of genuine accountability and transformation. That deserves to be recorded with the same precision as his errors. When the interview ended, silence dominated the kitchen for a few moments. Well, said Isaac finally, with the peculiar wisdom that sometimes emerged from his childlike innocence, it seems even the stern blonde lady can change her mind, huh? The observation broke the tension, making both Oliver and Lily burst into laughter. Yes, son, Oliver agreed, affectionately ruffling the boy's hair. Sometimes even the people who seem most inflexible can surprise us. Later that night, as Oliver and Lily relaxed on the terrace with glasses of wine, reflecting on the day's events, the phone rang again. It was Nathan Quinn, Lily's former editor. I read your article in Horizon, he said without preamble. It's exceptional work, Lily. The kind of deep, nuanced journalism that's sorely missing in today's market. Thank you, Nathan, she responded, genuinely touched by the compliment from her former mentor. That means a lot, coming from you. Actually, he continued, I'm calling to make a proposal. We're launching a new quarterly magazine focused on stories of social and personal transformation. I'd like to invite you to be our editor-in-chief. The proposal caught Lily completely by surprise. She had made peace with the idea of leaving journalism behind, focusing on her work at the foundation and her family. It's an honor, Nathan, but I'm not sure I'd be the right person. It's been a while since I left the newsroom. That's exactly why you're perfect, he insisted. You've lived a personal transformation that mirrors the stories we want to tell. Plus, the project would allow you to continue your work at the foundation. It would only be 2 days a week in the office. Can I think about it? Lily asked, looking at Oliver, who was following the conversation with interest. Of course. We'll talk next week. When she hung up, Lily turned to her husband. What do you think? I think it would be perfect for you, he responded without hesitation. You never stopped being a journalist at heart, Lily. It's part of who you are. But I have responsibilities with the foundation, with our family, and you'll continue to have them, Oliver assured her. But you also deserve to pursue your own passions. You helped me rediscover my purpose. It wouldn't be fair if I didn't support you in doing the same." Lily felt moved by her husband's unconditional support. It was yet another testimony to how much he had changed. The old Oliver would have seen any interest outside the orbit of his priorities as an unacceptable distraction. "Perhaps I'll accept then," she finally said. "It would be an opportunity to tell stories that really matter." "Exactly like ours," Oliver agreed, raising his glass in a silent toast to the future they continued to build together. In the years that followed, the Vance family faced their ups and downs like any other. Sophia Armstrong's book was published and, as promised, offered a balanced portrait of Oliver, critical of his past but respectful of his transformation. The publication generated a few weeks of renewed media attention, but eventually the interest diminished. Isaac, now 11, was at the beginning of adolescence, a period that brought new challenges and discoveries. Although generally a quiet and studious boy, he had recently begun asking deeper and sometimes uncomfortable questions about the family's past. One Sunday afternoon, while Oliver was helping him with a science project in the home office, Isaac seemed distracted, clearly with something weighing on his mind. "What is it, son?" Oliver finally asked, noticing that the boy was barely paying attention to the explanations about the solar system they were assembling. Isaac hesitated a moment before answering. "Dad, the boys at school were talking. They said Mum only married you because of your money, that she infiltrated the mansion on purpose as part of a plan." Oliver felt a pang of pain upon realizing that, despite all their efforts to protect their son, rumors and gossip would inevitably reach him. He took a deep breath, knowing that the moment required complete honesty. "Son, the story of how your mother and I met is complicated, and it will probably continue to be misinterpreted by people who don't know all the details," he began, carefully choosing his words. "It's true that your mother entered the mansion with a professional objective. She was an investigative journalist researching my business." Isaac's eyes widened slightly. Although he vaguely knew about his parents' past, they had never gone into all the details. "So she was pretending to be a housekeeper?" he asked, trying to process the information. "Yes," Oliver confirmed, "but what happened afterward wasn't planned by either of us. We got to know each other for real, beyond the appearances and the roles we were playing, and you, son, were an essential part of that story. It was through your innocence and your open heart that both your mother and I began to see each other as we really were." "But she was investigating you because you had done wrong things, right?" asked Isaac, his agile mind connecting the dots. "Yes," Oliver admitted. "I had committed irregularities in my business, things for which I later took responsibility. Your mother was just doing her job as a journalist, trying to expose the truth. There was nothing wrong or dishonorable in that." Isaac was silent for a moment, processing everything. "So, you were both kind of hiding who you really were." "Exactly," Oliver agreed, impressed once again with his son's perspicacity. "And it was only when we stopped pretending and showed our true faces, with all the flaws and imperfections, that we could really connect." "It's a pretty weird story to tell at school," Isaac observed with a small smile. Oliver laughed. "Yes, it's not the typical your parents met in college, but it's our story and there's nothing in it we should be ashamed of. People make mistakes, son. What matters is how we respond to those mistakes and what we learn from them." At that moment, Lily appeared in the office doorway. She had just arrived from the magazine's office where she worked as editor-in-chief 3 days a week, dividing her time with the foundation. "What are you two talking about so seriously?" she asked, noticing their concentrated expressions. "About how you met," Isaac replied directly. "About you being an undercover journalist and Dad having done wrong things in business." Lily shot a quick glance at Oliver, who nodded subtly, indicating everything was all right. She approached and sat beside her son. "I think it's time we told you the whole story," she said gently, without simplified versions or euphemisms. In the hours that followed, Oliver and Lily shared with Isaac, in terms appropriate for his age, but without softening the essential truth, the complete story of their meeting, the challenges they faced, and how love had emerged from the most improbable circumstances. "The most important thing we want you to understand, son," Lily concluded, "is that although we began with lies and hidden agendas, what we built afterward was based on the most absolute honesty. Truth was the foundation of our family. And you were the catalyst for all this," added Oliver, It was through your eyes that we began to see each other and ourselves more clearly. Isaac absorbed all this with the peculiar mixture of maturity and innocence that characterized him. I think I understand, he finally said. It's like that saying Grandma Harriet always mentions, God writes straight with crooked lines. Oliver and Lily exchanged emotional glances. Harriet, the former housekeeper who was now retired but remained close to the family, often shared these bits of folk wisdom with the boy. Exactly, son, Lily agreed, embracing him. Sometimes the paths that seem wrong lead us exactly where we need to be. The following week, Isaac's English teacher called Lily, sounding intrigued. Mrs. Vance, I wanted to talk about the essay Isaac turned in today. The theme was my family, and, well, he wrote something quite unusual. Unusual how? Asked Lily, feeling a twinge of apprehension. He told a very frank version of the story of how you and your husband met, including your work as an undercover journalist and Mr. Vance's legal problems in the past. I see, Lily responded, not knowing exactly how to react. I hope there's no problem with that. We recently had a family conversation where we decided to be completely honest with Isaac about our past. There's no problem at all, the teacher assured. In fact, I was impressed with the maturity with which he handled the topic. He wrote, and I'm quoting, "My parents taught me that what matters is not being perfect, but being honest and always trying to improve. They transformed mistakes into lessons and lies into truths. That's why our family is strong." Lily felt her eyes filling with tears. He really wrote that? Word for word, the teacher confirmed. Mrs. Vance, whatever challenges there might have been in your past, you and your husband are clearly doing an extraordinary job, raising a reflective and emotionally intelligent boy. That night, after Isaac was asleep, Lily showed Oliver the copy of the essay that the teacher had emailed. They read it together, moved not just by the words their son had chosen, but by the deep understanding they revealed. When we decided to tell him the truth, part of me feared he might see it as a disillusion, Oliver confessed, that he would be disappointed to discover his parents weren't the flawless heroes he might have imagined. I think we underestimated children's capacity to understand human complexity, Lily responded. Perhaps Isaac even admires us more now, knowing that we're real people who made mistakes, but found the courage to change. Oliver nodded, reflective. I know what touched me most. The way he wrote that we transformed lies into truths. Not that we erased the lies or simply replaced them. We transformed one thing into another. There's a philosophical depth in that which surprised me. He has the best of both of us, Lily smiled. Your capacity for deep reflection and my ability to articulate complex ideas with clarity. And something entirely his own, too, added Oliver. A wisdom that seems to come from somewhere beyond us. As they carefully saved the essay, a treasure they would certainly preserve for years to come, both silently reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought them here. From a corrupt businessman and a journalist on a secret mission to dedicated parents raising a son who already demonstrated more wisdom than many adults. Life rarely follows the paths we plan, Oliver thought. And sometimes the most unexpected detours lead us exactly where we should be. 5 years later, the grand auditorium at Columbia University was packed. Families, teachers, authorities, and journalists occupied every available seat for the National Young Writers Contest Awards ceremony. In the front row, Oliver and Lily Vance watched with unbridled pride as Isaac, now a 16-year-old, ascended to the stage to receive the first-place award in the youth category. Please give a warm welcome to Isaac Foster Vance, author of the essay Reflections of the Soul, Redemption and Transformation in the Digital Age, announced the Master of Ceremonies. Applause echoed through the auditorium as the young man, tall and lean like his adoptive father, but with his mother's expressive dark eyes, approached the microphone. Wearing a simple yet elegant suit, Isaac discreetly adjusted his tie, a gesture he had unconsciously inherited from Oliver, before beginning to speak. First, I'd like to thank the judging committee for this recognition, he began with a clear, confident voice that tugged at Lily's heart. When had her little boy grown so much? But mainly I want to thank my parents, who taught me the most valuable lesson a young person can learn in these times, that our stories aren't defined by our mistakes, but by how we respond to them. In the audience, Oliver, now with completely grey hair but maintaining the same imposing posture as always, firmly held Lily's hand. His face, though marked by the years, radiated a pride and serenity few would have imagined possible in the once ruthless businessman. Lily, whose work as editor-in-chief of Transformation magazine had earned her 2 journalism awards in recent years, felt tears threatening to overflow as she watched her son speak with such discernment and maturity. My essay explores how, in the age of social media and constant exposure, we make the mistake of believing our identities are fixed and immutable, Isaac continued. We construct personas online and offline and become imprisoned by them, fearing that any change will be seen as inauthenticity or weakness. He paused briefly, his eyes finding his parents in the audience before continuing. But true authenticity isn't in remaining the same forever. It's in the courage to evolve, to recognize our mistakes and grow through them. It's in the vulnerability of showing not just who we are, but who we're becoming. The words resonated deeply with everyone present, but especially with Oliver and Lily, who knew better than anyone the personal journey that had inspired those reflections. After the ceremony, several journalists approached, eager to interview not just the award-winning young man, but also his parents. After all, the story of Oliver Vance's transformation and his marriage to the journalist who had originally planned to expose him had become almost legendary in American business and media circles. Isaac, your essay mentions the courage to evolve. Was this idea inspired by your parents' story? Asked a reporter from a major newspaper. The young man smiled, that smile that so reminded Lily of her own in her most sincere moments. My parents aren't just my theoretical inspiration. They're living proof that genuine transformation is possible, but I think it's important to emphasize that they never used their story to promote themselves or create a convenient narrative. They simply lived according to their values, day after day. Mr. Vance, another journalist addressed Oliver, looking back after all these years, is there anything you would do differently? Oliver reflected for a moment before responding. I'd like to say I regret the mistakes of the past, but the truth is more complex. If I hadn't followed exactly that path, with all its detours and failures, I wouldn't have arrived at this moment. I wouldn't have this extraordinary family. He paused, his expression softening. What I truly wish is that more people would understand that it's never too late to change direction. Mrs. Vance, a young reporter asked Lily, as a journalist, how do you balance the pursuit of truth with the empathy you clearly advocate in your magazine? Lily smiled, appreciating the depth of the question. The true pursuit of truth is never in opposition to empathy. In fact, we can't really understand the truth of a situation or a person without the willingness to see beyond the surface, to understand the deeper contexts and motivations. That's what I learned in my own journey, that truth without compassion can be as harmful as lies. As the interviews continued, Thomas Lawrence discreetly approached the group. Now chairman of the board of the Vance Foundation, having left direct management of the corporation some years earlier, Thomas had become not just a business ally, but a true friend of the family. Am I interrupting? He asked with a smile. Not at all, Oliver responded, taking the opportunity to gently end the interviews. In fact, we have reservations for a celebratory dinner. If you'll excuse us. As they moved away, Thomas leaned in to whisper to Isaac, Impressive speech, kid. But you know your dad's going to be quoting phrases from it for the next few months, right? Isaac laughed. I'm used to it. He still quotes things I said when I was 5. Only because you were as wise then as you are now, Oliver defended himself with a smile. Just a bit shorter. The restaurant they had chosen was elegant without being ostentatious, a reflection of the new lifestyle the family had adopted, comfortable but far from the excesses that had characterized Oliver's former existence. Besides Thomas, Harriet, the former housekeeper, now a beloved surrogate grandmother to Isaac, had been invited, along with Nathan Quinn and his wife. Over the years, the family's inner circle had expanded to include people who shared their values and appreciated their journey without judgment. During dinner, while the adults chatted animatedly, Isaac noticed a familiar figure entering the restaurant. Sophia Armstrong, now with completely white hair but still maintaining the impeccable elegance that had always characterized her, approached their table. I hope I'm not interrupting, she said, but I couldn't help but congratulate the young award-winning writer. I read your essay, Isaac. It's extraordinary. Thank you, Ms. Armstrong, the young man responded with genuine politeness. Over the years, Sophia had become an occasional though distant presence in the family's life, not exactly a close friend, but no longer an adversary either. "Sophia, join us," invited Oliver, rising to pull out a chair for her. "Just for a moment," she agreed, sitting gracefully. "Actually, I have a gift for Isaac." From her elegant purse, she withdrew a small wrapped package. "Open it when you're alone," she suggested, with an enigmatic smile. Later that night, when the family returned home, Isaac finally opened Sophia's gift. It was a beautiful kaleidoscope, very similar to the one Oliver had given him so many years ago, but with a more sophisticated design. Accompanying it was a card that simply said, "To remember that the same reality can be seen in infinite different ways, depending on how light passes through it. Congratulations on your extraordinary talent." S.A. Isaac smiled, appreciating the symbolism of the gift. He carefully placed it on his shelf, next to the original kaleidoscope, which he still kept as a treasure, though it was somewhat worn from frequent use over the years. On the house's terrace, Oliver and Lily shared a quiet moment after the day's emotions. The night was clear, with an almost full moon illuminating the well-tended garden below. "He's growing up so fast," Lily commented, leaning against her husband's shoulder. "Soon he'll be in college, following his own path." "And what an impressive path it will be," Oliver responded. "Sometimes I wonder how we got so lucky." Lily reflected for a moment. "I don't think it was luck, exactly. I think it was choices. Some conscious, others guided by something deeper within us. The choice to be honest with each other, even when it was painful. The choice to prioritize what really mattered, instead of what the world said should matter." Oliver nodded, pulling her closer. "Remember that conversation during the storm, when you said happiness was in the small moments?" "I remember," she smiled. "You seemed so skeptical at the time." "Because I couldn't understand how something so simple could fill the void I felt," he admitted. "Now I understand that it's not the moments themselves, but the meaning they carry, the connection, the purpose." From Isaac's room, they heard the soft sound of his guitar, a hobby he had developed in recent years, and in which he showed considerable talent. The melody, sweet and contemplative, floated through the night like a perfect soundtrack for the moment. "You know what impresses me most about our son?" Oliver asked after some moments of comfortable silence. "What?" "How he manages to see the best in everyone, even knowing their flaws. How he forgives easily, without diminishing the importance of responsibility. It's as if he was born with a wisdom that took me decades to begin to comprehend." Lily smiled thoughtfully. "Perhaps it's because he grew up seeing that people are more than their worst actions or decisions. He saw firsthand how someone can transform completely when they find a purpose greater than themselves. Or when they find someone who sees them as they could be, not just as they are," added Oliver, looking at her with affection. The guitar melody changed to something more structured. Isaac was composing again, a process that often kept him up late into the night. "He's writing a song about us, you know," Lily revealed. "I heard some excerpts the other day. It's called Reflections." Oliver felt a deep emotion upon hearing this. It was appropriate, he thought, that his son would capture through music what they had lived through, the way they had reflected each other, seeing beyond the masks and facades to the vulnerable and imperfect souls behind them. "We saw each other when no one else did," he murmured, recalling his own journey. "Beyond appearances, beyond the roles we played. And that's what true love does," Lily concluded softly. "It sees what's hidden. It recognizes dormant potential. It reflects back not just who we are, but who we can become." As the night progressed and stars shone over the city, the Vance family rested in peace. Not the peace of perfection or the absence of challenges, but the deep peace that comes from living authentically, loving genuinely, and transforming even the greatest mistakes into opportunities for growth. The journey that had begun with lies and hidden agendas had blossomed into a life of shared purpose and lived truth, and at the center of that transformation was the most valuable lesson they had learned together, that in the reflections of each other's souls, we can find not just who we truly are, but also who we can become.